Good afternoon. It is February 27th, and we are on the 25th day of the Alec Murdaugh double homicide trial. The defense should have just one more witness, but as we were starting court this morning, the defense requested a jury view, and that was granted, which means the jurors are going to be taking a field trip out to Moselle that's more than 45 minutes away from the courthouse. So I think we're going to have a morning off tomorrow. If I'm the court, that's what I'm doing. If they can arrange it that fast, I am sending the jury out in the morning and then coming back for the state's evidence. The jury view is going to bump everything back a half a day. The prosecution said their rebuttal case should take about a day, which means we probably won't get to close and charge, closing arguments and charging the jury with their instructions or giving jury instructions until Thursday, I think. So I don't think we'll have any rumblings from the jury until early next week. So we will go into week 7 waiting for a jury verdict, I think. I don't think they're going to come back in a day. It's too much evidence. It's too long of a trial. I normally give them a day or a half day to a day for each day of trial. There's a lot of evidence and there's a lot of technical evidence to go over in this case. So with that, court's not back yet. We're going to talk about Alec Murdaugh facing an additional misdemeanor charge from Avery Wilkes. I found the article I was looking for. I should have just checked my Twitter. It's literally the last thing I retweeted. So with that, I should have just gone and checked. I had flagged it so I would find it, and then I didn't. All right, y'all. Let's go. Let's roll the intro. Let's get into it. We're going to talk about that misdemeanor charge while we're waiting for the court to come back. Court should be back in a few minutes. And that's what it is. Let's go. Emily, is your intro ready? No. Have you shared your screen? Look, it's the afternoon. It's week 6. Crap, we're in week 6 of the 3-week trial. Everyone's tired. Hey there, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not. Let's get into it. All right, let's go to Avery Wilkes, who's a local reporter there in South Carolina. Local authorities have quietly charged Alec Murdaugh with an additional misdemeanor related to contraband involving a book, a source tells Post and Courier. So we're just going to hop over to the Post and Courier. I'm going to put this in the chat so that y'all have the link to this story. You can also find it on my Twitter if you want to do the things. If you don't Twitter, I understand. I don't Twitter much either. All right. Let's see. Walterboro, Alex Murdaugh lied easily and convincingly to his family, friends, legal clients, law partners for more than a decade as he stole millions of dollars to finance his lavish lifestyle. Thank you, Avery. Thank you. Not extravagant, lavish. We take lavish lifestyles here. That's what we're talking about. Lavish lifestyle. And raging opioid addiction, state prosecutor Creighton Waters asserted February 24th. They finally asserted that, but they haven't asserted it much, which is why we don't speculate on, would he have done this or that in service of his addiction? We don't have evidence of that. We don't have anyone saying what he would or would not do. Uh-oh. Quiet. Oh, the bailiff is yelling at the court or yelling at the audience to shut up because the judge is coming out on the bench. If there's no matters and they bring the jury, we'll finish up about the misdemeanor. The judge is like, they did not rise for the judge to come in? This bailiff has had it with this audience. Let's see if either side has anything that came up over the lunch. If not, they'll just bring the jury. Oh, the defense is saying something. I could hear it. Yeah, the bailiff has to be annoyed. The bailiff is like totally put out at this point. There's a lot of chatter in that courtroom.
You bring the jury.
All right. We're going to just bring the jury. So as the court brings the jury, they kind of mute their audio. We'll finish up this. Talking about the closing. We know about closing. We know about the crowd. Can we get to the misdemeanor Can we get to the Avery? Where is it? Is that just the summary? This is a very long summary, and I appreciate the summary of the cross-examination. Update. No. I thought it was in here. Boo. All right, well, I'll go back through this and look a little bit more. Again, it's relating, and all sources say it's relating to a book. Pulling from Court TV, from Walterboro, former attorney now facing misdemeanor charge while on trial for murders of his wife and son. On Saturday, Colton County Sheriff's Office confirmed Murdaugh will be served with an arrest warrant following his double murder trial for, quote, bringing contraband. Authorities claim the court clerk, that's interesting, very interesting. The court clerk handed Murdaugh a book that was passed from someone in his family. The clerk knows better than that. The alleged incident occurred on February 8th during day 11 of testimony, the same day a bomb threat disrupted proceedings. 2 days later, Murdaugh's family was asked to move back a few rows.
Madam First Lady, how's the jury?
Exhausted.
They're doing okay.
Very good, thank you. Your next witness.
The judge asked how the jury was and asked the defense to call their next witness.
Defense calls John Marvin Murdaugh.
I was wondering if we were going to hear from John Marvin. Is John Marvin their last witness? I'm actually really interested to hear what John Marvin has to say. Very interested. Are you? Are you ready to hear from John Marvin? I am.
You place your left hand on the Bible and raise
Do
your
you
right.
think the defense thinks they'll find him more credible than Alec, and that's why they end with John Marvin? That the jury's going to like
Have
him
a seat
better?
on the stand.
Oh, it got dark in this courtroom over the lunch break. I'm going to switch to a 3 feed so we can see the defendant's reaction to his brother testifying.
John Marvin Murdaugh, Murdaugh.
Mr.
I'm
Murdaugh,
gonna
will you tell the
put up a poll.
jury just briefly some background information? Where are you from? What do you do?
Yes, sir. So I was born in Columbia,
The defense isn't going to
grew
call
up in
Cousin Eddie.
Hampton, attended public schools from first grade through high school, graduated Wade Hampton, went to the University of South Carolina, got a degree in criminal justice, and I'm now self-employed. I've opened some companies in the heavy equipment business.
What's the name of your company?
Well, the main company is Murdaugh Rental Center, but I've got Murdaugh Kubota, Murdaugh Equipment LLC.
There's a bunch of
So
them.
generally speaking, I'm in the construction equipment, agricultural tractors and implements. I'm in the equipment business.
And do you have offices?
Not a lawyer. Went to criminal
locations,
justice, didn't go to law
multiple
school. We
locations?
appreciate you for
I
that,
have
John
two,
Marvin.
one in Hampton and one in Okatee, Bluffton area.
Are you related to the defendant, Richard Alexander?
John Marvin
Murdaugh?
is his
I
brother.
am. I'm his brother.
Do you have any other brothers?
I do.
Randy?
Murdaugh is my brother.
And
Is
do you
Randy
have a
sitting in
sister?
court?
I do. Lynn.
All right.
Also
figure.
sitting in court.
And
I've been
your
interested to
parents
hear
are who?
this.
Randolph and Libby Murdaugh.
Are you the only son of the three that didn't go to law school?
I am, and I'm quite proud of it.
He told the audience not to react.
Tell the jury.
We're
generally
allowed to
about-
chuckle.
about
They're not.
Murdaugh family, your family in this area.
Well,
We're allowed to
obviously,
giggle.
we're probably
They're
like
supposed to be
most
stoic
families,
in
or
the
a lot of
audience.
families, we're very close. I mean, the siblings, we stay in touch. We do holidays together. You try to interact and keep your family core together. I mean, we're just, a normal family doing normal family things.
Okay.
Do your parents, and we've heard about.
I think the
your father,
questioning's
Randolph
hard for
Murdaugh,
Jim because he knows
died
this
on
family so
June the
well.
10th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then your mother's Miss Libby,
She is.
and she's still alive, correct?
She is. In fact, yesterday was her birthday.
And you went by to see her, I
I
understand.
did. With my kids.
Did you take her Krispy Kreme?
The
Oh, that was the dad that liked Krispy Kreme.
in the spring of 2021, were they both alive? Was your dad alive?
Yes, sir.
And what was his health? in the spring of 2021?
Well, for some, he had been battling cancer, and not just cancer, I'll use that term loosely. He had multiple forms of cancer, but he had been battling cancer, had health issues. He had been through heart surgeries. Just overall, his health was not good. You know, just in and out of hospitals, just
Right.
age and the diseases were catching up to him.
And would you check in on your mom and dad any chance you got?
I don't know why that matters.
I would, so.
Oh, he's gonna
I
get to
didn't
Alec.
tell y'all this, but so I don't live
Checking
in
in all the-
Hampton. My wife and family and I, we live
Time.
down in Beaufort, or just outside of Beaufort. And
I
so my
wonder-
drive is about an hour's drive to do it. So I didn't visit as often as Randy and Alec because they were in Hampton. But absolutely, anytime I had the opportunity to work in Hampton at my office, I would always take time to stop by. And then sometimes I would just, you know, just wanted to
I
go
still
see my
want it to
mom.
be John Grisham.
And was it routine for one, so either your brothers who lived in Hampton to stop by and check on them routinely?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, you know, I don't know every time they went because I wasn't there, but I feel confident that they visited more just because of the proximity.
John Marvin's like, I didn't go to
It's
law
just an
school.
easier- it's just an
I
easier
lived an
visit.
hour away.
So well, let's
John
talk
Marvin
about
got some
proximity.
distance.
Your brother Randy, where does he live?
He lives in Hampton, in town.
And then your sister Lynn, where does she live?
She lives in Somerville.
Okay. And then Alec, where did he live in spring of 2021?
Okay.
Well, I think in the spring of '21, he was living in Moselle. I think all of them were.
Okay. And is Moselle close to Almeda?
Well, it's further than Randy's house, but much closer than mine.
And is that, and your
Fair.
mother's house, I'm saying Almeda, but. is
What do you mean
Almeda
by
a town, or
close?
what
No,
is
Almeda's correct. That's the
What do you mean by close,
the
Jim?
location. That's the property name, if you will, the intersection name. I think that's a general.
And just tell Jerry where that's located.
It would be,
Like, let's not
just,
give the whole
east of
address.
Varnville, maybe
That's fine.
2 or 3 miles outside of the town
We've
limits.
seen the maps. Let's like
Is it
just
basically at the intersection of,
okay.
I don't know, what's that main?
Intersection
Gray
of
Street
278 and
and the
Highway
end of the world.
68 that would go to, one goes to Ridgeland and one goes to Yemassee.
Okay.
For a local
And,
jury, that all makes sense
And
to
would
them.
Alec visit
For
your
us, it's
mom
like
and dad
okay.
frequently in the spring of 2021, to your knowledge?
Oh, absolutely.
And we'll get to more of that.
No, don't. If you're gonna ask a question, can you just follow through with it instead of saying we'll get to that
I
later?
wanna talk about Paul. How well did you know Paul?
I knew Paul very well.
Oh,
Excuse me, I'm gonna have a hard time talking about Paul because we had a very special relationship. But I knew him very well,
it,
and I'll do my best to
the thing
answer any
is,
questions about him.
Well, did he
John
have a nickname?
Marvin's emotional reaction in court has rang
He
so
did.
much more
They called him
true to
Little
me
Rooster.
than almost anybody else.
And did they call him anything
it
else?
hurts my
Well,
heart
I
for
mean,
him.
He'd been called Little Rooster, had been called, as you heard, Paw Paw. I mean, that's what my family, my kids called him.
Paul, by the way, Paul.
What did you call him?
Well, it depends on where we were and what we were doing.
It is.
When we were, excuse me,
Because no matter who you believe did this,
when we were
The loss
doing
to John
something
Marvin
fun and a
is
social event, I would
palpable.
refer to him as Paw Paw. Now, y'all haven't heard this yet, but he worked for me. So when he worked for
We
me,
heard that.
it was Paul, or it was Paul Terry, because I was trying to be, you know, a little
Professional.
more authoritative.
Right. Who
you only
else
call somebody by their middle
called him
name.
Paul?
Most of all the family. And that's not, you know, that's not a name that was said at all times, but when we're having fun, kids would say it, my wife would say it. It was just a name that was used in fun times and in normal times.
Because everybody's got a
And you
nickname,
mentioned
which
Paul
makes
worked
sense.
for you. When did he work for you?
You know, that's, I thought you were going to ask that, and unfortunately, I don't know. He's worked for me maybe prior to June of '21, he was working, or he was working then, and I think he worked the 2 summers prior to that.
And-
And it was just summer work. I mean, you know, it would only last a month or so, a month and a half.
And was he working for you in June of 2021?
He was.
And what was he doing for you?
Anything I asked him to do.
It seems
Where
like he
was
really
working?
enjoyed being outside.
He was working at my Bluffton Okeechobee store. He would do anything from power wash equipment.
So working in
or-
equipment seems like it would
or
be something you would
deliver new
enjoy.
tractors that were being sold, talk to customers, help customers load and unload rental equipment. He did, as you heard someone testify, that boy would work. And so whatever was asked of him, he would do.
Was he on the phone the whole time, or did he actually work?
Not at work, he was not. Well, not while I was there.
Oh, right. Was he a good worker?
He was an excellent worker.
The, did you spend time with Paul? Well, let me back up. Do you have a place where you hunt? You have a property?
I do.
Do you have a name for that property?
We call it Greenfield.
And would Paul and Buster come out to Greenfield to hunt?
They would.
Would they?
Absolutely.
Let me just back up. What was the relationship between Alec, Paul, and Buster?
Oh, it was a great relationship. You know, anything that the boys were doing, Alec wanted to do, and the boys always came first to him. Some of y'all may have been on dove hunts before, but we would
Amanda,
I have a very
it's
small
because
field, and,
it's emotional testimony
you know,
and
I've
it rings
got
very
10
true.
stands in the field, and I have,
You can
before the
feel
hunt, I have it organized
what
where I
he's
know
going
who's
through.
sitting where. Well, I have Alec, he says, well, can the boys come? Well, of course they can come, so now I've got to rearrange for that. Or if they said they were coming and the boys backed out, Alec always backed out. I was thinking about this. To this day, I don't believe he has ever come hunting with me since his boys have been old enough to hunt without his boys. It's always with the boys.
Did he do other things with them?
Yeah, they sporting events, you know, football games,
I
baseball
accidentally ended our
games.
poll.
Was he close with
62% of you said you've
son?
been waiting to hear from John
Very close.
Marvin. 37% of you are like,
How about
nah.
Maggie?
I bet all of you wish
What
it
did
was
you
cousin Eddie.
observe of his relationship with Maggie?
It was you know, it was a great relationship. I mean, all marriages, I'm sure, have
He's more emotional
hiccups here
than-
and there, but I'm telling
He
you,
rings truer in his emotion than Alec,
it
I
was a
think.
good marriage. In coming here, I was trying to think of ways to describe it. My wife and I and Alec and Maggie, we went to a concert together. It was the Darius Rucker concert. And of course, we're sitting in there, Alec and Maggie are sitting just below us. And I had just gone and, I hope I can say this in court, I'd just gone and bought one of those $15 beers. And I was back in my seat and
They are
songs playing.
$15 beers.
My wife taps me and Alec and Maggie are holding hands and swaying together. And she's like, why aren't you holding my hand?
He's
And
like, I have a
so my
$15 beer.
beer got put down. They had a great relationship. I mean, that's just one of many. Football games, they would put out a tailgate spread. They would welcome the kids, family, friends. It was just a wonderful.
And did they do a lot of family things together with Paul and Buster and Paul and Buster's friends?
Yes, they did. You know, I knew of trips that they would take, family trips. You know, vacations. They had a house at Edisto that y'all have heard about, and they would have, you know, they'd always have friends come over, particularly the boys' friends.
There's been some discussion during this trial about Paul leaving guns and stuff around. Did you ever experience that?
I did.
And tell the jury a little bit about your experience.
Well, you know, I've heard the testimony about it, and it's accurate. I mean, I could tell you all 100 stories of him leaving things, but he was notorious. He would come stay with us at our house.
But it sounds like
He would
Alec was
leave.
too.
Liz would
though.
have all of his clothes washed, and, you know, he just left and didn't care about where his clothes were. In fact, Paul came duck hunting with me one time, and at Greenfield. And I smile fondly on this when I, you know, think back on all this. So we had a great duck hunt. I think there were 3 of us in the blind. Great duck hunt. We picked up all the birds.
I also
decoys,
enjoyed duck hunt,
and
but the
we
Nintendo
left and we go
game.
back up and have a nice breakfast. Yeah, doing all the post hunt, all the fun things that you do.
I don't. know what
Well,
that is, but okay.
I went back
Is there
hunting.
food? Are there
I
snacks?
don't know, it was
imagining
probably a
there's
week and a
snacks.
half, maybe 2 weeks later, and his hunting gear is still in the blind. I mean, I had to smile when I saw it. I was like, that's Paul.
Right. I want to ask you a little bit about riding property. I mean, you ride your property down at Greenfield,
I do.
and
Molly
And
T
if you-
said
But
snacks.
riding in
what, like checking on the property? Do you,
What was that?
oh, you mean
noise?
like just riding around joyriding or checking feeders or?
Right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
and do you always carry a gun when you're doing that?
I don't.
And have you ridden property like at your dad's place with your dad and maybe Alec or others? I mean, is that
Right.
a
Well-
frequent occurrence?
I would say almost never when I rode the property with my dad.
Almost never carry a gun.
Almost never would we carry a gun. We would just joyride. Now, if it were late in the afternoon and we were considering maybe getting in a deer stand, at the last minute, possibly. But typically, with my dad and us, we didn't carry a gun then.
Right.
He's definitely not
Speaking
chugging
of your
down
dad,
water
what
the
was,
way Alec was on the stand. Alec was
you recall-
just
What was going on with his health?
digging
the
to that
weekend,
water for dear life.
the
Why is
Saturday,
this relevant?
Sunday,
Some of it's humanizing the
before June
victims.
the 7th, so
Some
I
of it's
guess we
explaining
start-
the family.
Friday would be the 4th, Saturday would be the 5th, Sunday would be the 6th.
And he's also a
Right.
witness to a lot of what happened next.
So he
Police
was
interviews
actually
and what
in the
have you.
hospital, I believe, in Columbia that weekend. And I think he got out of the hospital on Sunday.
Okay, and did you pick him up? Your brother picked him up? You know who picked him up?
I did not. I didn't, I may have been out of town. I can't recall. I've, heard the testimony about it. I did not pick him up.
Did you end up taking your father to the doctor on that Monday, June the 7th?
I did.
And where did you take him?
I took him to Savannah,
And,
to what I would call his normal doctor.
Okay.
I think Columbia was, maybe he had to go up there for some different
okay.
things or another. I'm not sure.
And was he having some breathing issues on
He was
that
having
Monday?
major breathing issues.
And when you went to the doctor on Monday, June the 7th, was there a decision made to admit him to the hospital?
It was. So when I took him, we were only going to a doctor's appointment. We were not going to the hospital. It was just me taking him to a doctor's appointment to try to find out what the breathing issues were, maybe, some type of a treatment or medication or something to help him. While we were there, not as soon as the doctor saw him, but when the doctor saw him and went through some things, he immediately told both of us that he had to be in the hospital, that he was not getting the oxygen that he needed.
I think calling Randy is a
and
pickle,
what-
given the fact that Randy
when-
still works
was
at
he
the law
admitted on
firm
that
that's now Parker
Monday?
Law Group.
He was.
I think that's why.
And what was?
Or at
you
least a
understood the
big part of
prognosis,
why
when
they
he
didn't
was
call Randy.
Put back in hospital on Monday, the 7th.
On Monday, the 7th, yes, so
He
my
should- he
understanding
probably has an
was
idea
the
of what the
doctor
defense is
that-
gonna
that
ask
we
him,
were
Bethany.
seeing, or that he was seeing,
They would have talked about
had some really
it
strong
at length.
beliefs that the cancer that he had was not causing the breathing obstructions, that it very likely could be pneumonia. And he told us, he said, if it's the cancer, that's the worst, but if it's pneumonia like I think it is, I think we've got some treatment options.
So what was there hope on
Oh,
June the 7th?
Absolutely. When he told me that, I mean,
This is a big
first of all,
part
when
of
he
it.
said he had to go in the hospital, it scared me. Obviously, it scares you when a doctor tells you immediately have to check in. But yes, him explaining that he was optimistic that it was going to be pneumonia.
This goes to
that
Alec's
there would
dad
be a
not being
breathing treatment to
terminal
help it. I felt
on the
pretty
7th.
good.
But
Now,
I think that goes to the
evidence, and I'm not
prosecution too.
Read it again, but did you and your brother send out text messages?
'Cause if
to
Dad's
family
not
members giving them
terminal-
an update?
We
on-
did.
And he's really that
And was
worried
on
about the
7th.
June
That was
10th
on the
hearing.
7th.
And
He
in the
doesn't know his
update,
dad's
you
gonna
explained
die.
the Doctor believed it was pneumonia.
I don't know.
Yes, I gave
It goes both ways.
a basic summary of what I was told by the doctor, what I believed
I've
it
got
to be.
Hershey Kisses this
I
afternoon.
think Randy and I had a few minutes to
Because we
talk,
just-
and he typed up another email just to make sure that everybody was in the loop.
Okay. And
Oh, I'm sorry, not an email, a text message.
text
I'm
message.
sorry.
Okay. And did the diagnosis and the prognosis subsequently change on your
Well,
dad?
it did. It did.
When was that?
Well, so on Tuesday afternoon, we're back out at we're back at Moselle. And, you know, we still hadn't heard much. I mean, all this other stuff going on, it just, as you can imagine, it's so much going on. Randy called me and told me they had done everything that they could do, and that he would be coming home in an ambulance under hospice care.
Okay. And did he die on June the 10th?
He died, I think, 2 days later.
There's,
Randy has not testified. I don't think he will. But I feel for John
Going back
Marvin. I
to-
really do.
taking your dad to the doctor and then checking in
And
the
the jury
hospital.
might as well.
There's some vehicles being switched around a little bit, and it,
No, his dad was at home at the
And we get
610
to,
meeting. At the 610 police interviews, they got the
that.
call that he
Can you
had
explain to the
passed.
jury
and that's
how
when
all
those
that
interviews
transportation
stopped
went
on
to
June
get
10th.
your dad to the hospital, well, doctor.
You're talking about on that Monday?
With the downloads of the phone and stuff.
So
June the 7th.
it's a little bit complicated, but I'll do my best to explain it. So Randy, on Monday morning, Dad had been in the hospital Sunday, got out Sunday, knew that he needed to be seen by his regular doctor, but did not have an appointment. And so Randy was doing everything he could to get him in as early as he could on that Monday, and just asked me, he says, if I get the appointment, can you take him? And I said, absolutely, I'd be delighted to. A little while later, an hour or two, I don't know, it was still that morning, Randy calls me and says, okay, they have an opening for him, but he has to get there right away. So Hampton is, an hour and a half from Savannah, I don't know, hour and a half. He said, you don't have time to drive to Hampton to get him. I will meet you in Ridgeland, about halfway, which is not far from my house.
Jeannie was
And
under the
then you just take
impression
him, and I'll go back. He had
that he
some
was terminal on the
time-sensitive,
7th.
Things to work on. So we met at Palmetto Co-op in Ridgeland. I got in my mom's car with my dad. Randy got in my truck and drove it back to Alameda, where Randy had come to pick up my dad. So
There's a lot
Randy's
of car
truck's back at
swapping
Mom and
going
Dad's
on.
house. So I drive Dad to Savannah in my mom's car, go through what we just talked about, the doctor's appointment, getting checked in. And back then, COVID was still going on, and there were several restrictions.
I don't know when they swapped
wouldn't let
cars
me go
with
back
Paul.
with my dad at that time. So I was gonna be driving home, and now I'm stuck in my mom's car. So I knew Paul was working, and it was, I guess
Oh,
it was
that's
around
why.
5 or so, and that's when we closed. I called Paul and said, Paul, listen, I need you to, if you would, drive my mom's car back to Alameda, pick up my truck and bring it to work the next morning. And then just leave he was driving like a farm truck that day. I said, leave it and I'll drive it, and we'll just swap back the next morning. And so that's how our cars got swapped.
That
All
makes
right, so
sense. Because the car
When you got
swapping
back
didn't
on
make a
the
lot of sense.
evening
That
of the
made
7th,
sense.
Did you see Paul?
I did,
And where did you see him?
at my house.
Yep. Good to see you,
And-
Rob.
and he-
Car swapping
He
is
got into
a
your
whole thing.
mom's
Got into my
sedan-
mom's
sedan
car,
and drove
right,
to Alameda.
and drove it to Alameda, and then got in my truck and drove it to Moselle.
Okay. And you said
Paul
the
was
farm
working
truck
for John
was
Marvin.
at your house. Do you remember where Paul's truck was?
Paul's normal truck was in the shop, being
That-
worked on.
Was that Jimmy Butler's?
It was a shop in Varnville, Jimmy Butler's, yes, sir.
It was at Jimmy
Now,
Butler's.
when you last saw Paul, was he just as normal as you see him every day, or was?
Oh, absolutely. He was playing with my kids in the yard, waiting on me to get there. In fact, that particular day, he was pretty dirty, so whatever he had been doing back at work had him pretty dirty, but he was playing with the kids in the yard, being Paul.
Is that the last time you saw him?
That is the last time I saw him.
When did you learn that, and how did you learn that Maggie and Paul were murdered on the night of June the 7th?
Well, Alec called me.
Millie, it's a very good point. He's just telling what he
Liz
saw.
and we have
what he
3
did.
young kids, younger kids. I mean, our youngest is 8 now, so it would have been 6 at the time. And
He's
so
just saying what
we
he
don't have a
saw and
lot
what he
of
did.
Free time to ourselves.
No, I
But
think,
that
I
night
believe
we
I
were-
would have
we were watching
just
television.
what it is.
And
Well,
Why
let me
it
back
feels
up.
more fluid.
Had Alec called you earlier in the night when he was on his way?
He never
to-
said I
Oh,
would
yes,
have done
sir.
this, I would have
Awesome.
done that. He's not narrating from the
And
outside,
that
he's
phone record of
remembering.
that. What do you recall of that conversation?
he called, just checking on me, just said, I saw the news about Dad, things look good, It was a brief conversation, and I hate to say it, but I kind of said, listen, man, Liz and I finally have a few minutes. Can we talk tomorrow? We're watching the movie.
And what was his demeanor when you spoke with him on the evening of the 7th?
Same as always, just normal.
And then later on that night, you got another phone call from him?
And I got when you asked the question, how did I learn? Yes, Alec called me and just absolutely hysterical. As soon as I heard his voice, I knew something bad was going on. Didn't know what. I'm in my pajamas. He said, something bad is really happening. I don't know what his exact words, but
He remembers
I
how he
think
felt.
he said, Maggie and Paul have been hurt really badly. Please get here as fast as you can. And, I drop what I'm doing and I go get dressed and I'm hurrying. I'm, just so many things are going through your mind. You don't know what to do. So I get dressed and I run outside and realize I don't have a car. Paul's car's out there and it is a hunk of junk. And I mean,
This was the farm truck.
this was a farm truck, and so I knew I couldn't take my wife's car because she was taking the kids to school. And at this point,
Can't leave the wife with
I
the
knew
farm
something
truck.
bad. I just didn't know how bad it was.
Yeah,
And so did you then get in the farm truck and head to Moselle?
I
it
did.
broke down.
I did.
And
And
what happened along the way?
well, so along the way, I'd spoken to Randy. He asked me to try to get in touch with a close family friend and one of their law partners, Danny Henderson. I was just constantly trying to call him. I'm driving fast. I'm trying to get to Moselle. And,
This makes sense
you know,
about
once I got Danny and
the trucks.
told him
and how the
that
truck
that he
ends up
needed
where
to
they
get
are.
up there, I had just a few minutes to myself, and I was crying, and somebody called me shortly after that. I don't know who it was. I can't remember, but I remember it was either Alec or Randy, I believe, and they said the sheets were being pulled over them.
Did the farm truck break down?
It did.
How'd you end up getting to Moselle?
Well, so let me back up and tell you. So the route that from my house down in Oakadee, Beaufort, takes me to Coosawhatchee, and I get on 95 to go to Yemassee and getting off and coming up that way. Well, another close family friend, his name is Greg Alexander. He is the chief of police in Yemassee. I reach out to him and I just say, Greg, I gave him said something bad had happened. Or again, I don't know when I was told about the sheets, but I told him, I said, listen, something bad's happened. We got to get up there. When I get to Yemassee, can you please help make sure I get to Moselle? Because this truck's sputtering, and I knew it wasn't good. And he met me at Yemassee, and he fell in behind me, and we started driving until he finally passed me in Varnville. Well, go ahead.
And did he end up driving you the rest of the way?
Well, he did. So he passed me shortly before Varnville.
broke
He took
down.
a ride on 63, and he was a little ways ahead of me when the truck quit on me. I called him and said, Greg, I said, come back and get me. The truck has broken down. And of course, he picked me up and took me straight on to Moselle.
Did were there any guns in the farm truck? that Paul had left when you got in it?
I have no idea. It was dark. When I got in it, as y'all can imagine, I was frantic. I jumped in it and I took off.
Did you ever see any guns in it?
That night, never. I mean, I didn't look. I mean, it just, I wasn't looking in the backseat. I wasn't worried about anything except getting to
there.
Moselle.
Okay.
And again, his testimony again
Do you
rings
remember,
like he's telling
about
you
the
what he
time
did that night.
You got to Moselle. What time was it?
Just, this is what I did that night. This
Or
is what I heard.
better
This
yet,
is what
who
people
was
told
there
me.
when
And
you
this
got
is how I felt. I don't
Well,
remember the
there were-
conversation, but I felt this way.
Well, before I got to Moselle, or we got to Moselle, you could see the lights flashing. It was just, there were tons of people. Mostly what I would describe
Tons
is
of people.
first responders of some sort.
And when you pulled up, where did you go?
So we came in the main gate and came around, and they had created I guess, a small crime scene. And when we pulled up, I saw Alec, and I think before Greg even stopped the car, I jumped out and ran to him.
And what was his condition, Alex?
Oh, he was just broken. I mean, distraught. I mean, everybody was. There were a few other people there, but he just, all we did is hugged and cried. I mean, I don't even know that we talked.
How long,
And he doesn't feel the need to
how long
fill
did you stay
in
down?
the things
adjacent
he
to the
doesn't
crime
remember.
scene?
He's very
Do you
comfortable
recall?
saying, I don't
Quite some time.
I don't know, I don't remember that.
You know, I have to assume that I probably was there at the 11 o'clock-ish. I don't know what time I got there, but I don't think we went back up to the house.
Very comfortable with what he does and doesn't
until
know,
well after midnight, maybe 2,
which
3.
is something I always look at with testimony.
And when you went to the house,
He doesn't feel the need to
did you
have
call
an
if any SLED
explanation.
agents came up there?
Well, I did not see any. I heard some testimony, some came and got some clothes, but I did not see any SLED agents at the house. The last officer that I remember seeing that night, or officers, were the ones that told us that we needed to leave that area, that they were going to be
Near the
doing stuff
kennels.
with the bodies, and that we needed to go to the house.
Right. When you went into the house, were there other people in there when you got in?
There were. You know, most people that I knew, some of Alec's partners, Randy's partners,
Randy and Alec
family
worked at the same law
members,
firm.
Lynn.
When
Was
did
there
Alec
food
get new
out or
glasses?
had food? What was it? Had anything? Did you
Well,
see food
I
out?
didn't see any food, but I saw pots and pans, and I saw folks that were cleaning up. They were removing pots and pans, but, you know, I never opened it and looked in it, so I presumed that it was food. They cleaned dishes,
It's
Put
what you
pots
do
and
when you
pans
don't know what to
away
do
or
with
in
your
the
hands,
refrigerator.
John Marvin. You just start cleaning
Was
shit.
a TV on in the house? Do you remember?
you know,
It's just what you do.
based on what I know, I would say it is, but I can't tell you 100% that it was on, but I'd be willing to bet it was.
What do you mean when you say based on what you know?
Well, I don't think I'd ever been in that house without the TV being on if Alec and Maggie were there.
After, well, did you ultimately go to Alameda that evening with Alec, Buster, and
SLED
Girlfriend,
and
We did.
Carlton
remember what
County
Alec was
didn't tell them
wearing
not to touch anything in the house. They
when,
told them to go to the
you went
house.
to Alameda?
So it's not on them for
Not
putting away
precise.
dishes.
I mean, I can't, he was wearing shorts and a T-shirt. I can't tell you details, but it was shorts and a T-shirt, you know, like relaxed shorts.
Do you know whether he had had a shower or not?
It appeared he had. I mean, his hair was not, I didn't see him in the shower, but I can tell you, I think he had a shower.
I understand.
That's how circumstantial evidence works, by the way. You
So
see
then
all the
let's move forward to
evidence that somebody's clean, they're not,
Morning of the June 8th.
hair is clean. It seems they'd had a
guess,
shower.
Did you get any sleep the night of June the 7th?
Very little. I don't know that I fell asleep. I've certainly laid in the bed. It just, as you can imagine, just the thoughts and things. I don't know if I slept. When I got up and started moving the next day, I certainly didn't feel like I'd slept.
Fair.
What did you do the next day when you got up?
You talking about precisely or generally?
Just generally.
I got up and
It seemed like he was saying his hair was still wet.
Alec was up. I don't think Buster and Buckland were.
But if he's
I told
gone
Alec
for an
that I
hour
was
at his
going over to
mom's house-
Greenfield, my farm that I told you all about, is
How is he still wet?
2 or 3 miles away, so it's very close. And I have all, plenty of clothes over there. So I told him I was going over there to shower and put on fresh clothes, and that I would meet him at Moselle.
And did you go to Moselle?
I did, after I left Greenfield, yes, sir.
And do you remember who was there when you got to Moselle?
I was the first one there.
And what'd you do?
I just went and stayed there until I knew Buster, Brooklyn, and Alec were coming. I suspected that other family members and partners, I knew others were coming, so I just kind of sat there just, in
It was
just in
also
disbelief
raining.
still. It's just, moments of just,
Was the door to the house
But his
unlocked?
shirt
Do you
wasn't
remember?
wet.
that's a good question. I thought about it. I don't remember. It either was unlocked or I had the code, because there's a keypad on a side door. But I can't tell you
Oh.
which door I went in.
There's a
I don't
keypad on
know.
the door into the gun room? Finally,
Did
someone
you eventually
answers
go down
why
to
we
the
hear a
kennel?
keypad. A keypad into the gun room makes perfect sense, because we
I
heard
did.
Alec go to
I
get a
did.
gun and keypad instead of going in the front door.
There was just, there was
John
a
Marvin,
fair
thank
amount of
you.
activity
There's a
in the
keypad
house
on
with
the gun
family
room.
and law partners, Alec's law partners, Randy's law partners. I just felt like I needed to go down. I needed to see for myself what had gone on and just kind of take it in.
The side door goes to the gun room.
Maybe for some type of understanding.
How long did you stay down there at the kennels?
Well, I can't, I don't know. But I will say this, before I went, I was unsure whether I was allowed to go, because I knew it was a crime scene. And so
The whole
I
property
reached
should have
out
been a
to
crime scene, but they didn't do
A friend
that.
of mine in law enforcement, and said, listen, I don't know who's handling the crime scene. I don't know whatever. He said, well, I'll find out and make sure that it's clear for you to go. And he said, don't go until I tell you. And he called me back a few minutes later and said he had spoken to, I believe it was Captain Ryan Neal, and had given the okay that everything was released and it was okay to go there.
And was it cleaned up?
No, Jim, it was not cleaned up.
Were there skull fragments?
Yeah, so,
That's leading, Jim.
so, excuse me, this is going to be really difficult. So I could easily see where Maggie had been. I saw the night before where the sheets were, and somebody had told me that who was who, and so I could see where Maggie had been, and it was grass, and, they had covered it up with dirt, so there really was nothing to see where Maggie was. I walked over to the feed room, and y'all have heard the descriptions. Y'all saw it. I've never seen pictures, and I've told them before coming to this court that I was not going to see pictures. But y'all can imagine what I experienced. It had not been cleaned up. I saw blood. I saw brains. I saw pieces of skull. And when I say brains, it could just be tissue. I don't know what I was seeing. It was terrible.
Because it's
And
terrible.
for some reason, I thought it was something that I needed to do for Paul to clean it up. I felt like it was the right thing to do. I felt like I owed him, and I started cleaning. And I can promise you, no mother or father or aunt or uncle should ever have to see and do what I did that day. I don't know, I'm not blaming anybody, but it's just, I was just overwhelmed. I did everything I could, and I would have moments where I would stop crying for a moment, and just in disbelief.
Yeah.
At one point, I called my brother Randy, and told him what I was doing, trying to describe what I was doing, and he immediately told me to stop doing it. It was not good for me. It was not healthy for me to be there.
Yep.
And
That's why they have companies that
couldn't
do
stop. I just,
it. Felt that it was the thing he had to do.
I had to do it for Paul.
Yep.
It's just what I had to do. And he told me to stop doing it. It was not good for me. It was not healthy for me to be there.
I don't
And
know why the Matrix just glitched.
couldn't
but
stop.
There we
I
are.
just, I had to do it for Paul. It's just what I had to do. And I don't know, it's probably 15, 20 minutes later.
Crime scenes are not cleaned
Mark
up by law
Ball shows up.
enforcement.
Y'all heard Mark Ball testify. And he came and hugged me and told me it was okay to leave. Okay to leave. What was left of Paul, they would clean it up. It's the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life.
And that's something that
What'd you do next?
they don't talk about a lot in cases, but
You
after
know,
the crime,
Mark,
after the crime scene is
Basically
cleared,
got me.
it's just
I'm sure
left for whoever owns the property to deal with.
I'm sure I was just a basket case, but he got me back to the house and, you know, got me back around family and, you know, just got back to, you know,
And that is what happens with crime
support of
scenes.
others
They are
that were there.
left.
And, you know, there were a lot of people at the house at that point.
Do you remember when you got back to the house, at some point in time, people raising questions or bringing up the fact that Maggie's phone had not been located?
Yeah, so that was, you know, particular the lawyers, they were all, you know, being lawyers, they were, you know.
They were all up in it.
questioning things amongst themselves and.
They
you know,
were
how
all
could this
up in it.
happen, trying to figure things out. But it was brought to my attention that Maggie's phone was not there. And that law enforcement had not found it. And,
He was
and
like,
I
"I could
can't
help."
say that, in fact, I can probably say that I didn't think of it because I'm not a big phone user or big app user or whatnot. But somebody brought to my attention and says, listen, if Buster or Alec, if they have an app on their phone, like Find My Phone or Find My Friends or
Find my iPhone.
an app like that, they said you very likely can find out where the phone is if the battery's not dead. And so I went to Buster and sure enough, I said, Buster, do you have this one of these apps like they're talking about? And he said, yeah, sure I do. I said, well, open it up.
Can we find your mom's
He
phone?
opened it up and he handed me the phone and I see Maggie's name and I press it where, you know, to activate it. And it pings Maggie's phone just out front of the property. And I was like, I hate to say it, but I said, holy shit, there it is. And I said, Buster, I'm taking your phone. I'm gonna go back down to the shed and show it to law enforcement.
And who did you approach first about the phone?
Well, I don't know who it was. Presumably it was SLED agents, because keep in
He's
mind.
like, I don't know.
I didn't know any of these guys with SLED. I mean, there were a couple of faces that I'd seen before,
Right.
but
This is not his
I
world.
don't know these guys.
He's
I've
like,
come
"Hey."
to know them, but I don't know them, or didn't know them then. So I went up to a SLED agent or two SLED agents and said, presumably SLED agents, and said, hey, I've got Buster's phone here, and it's got an app on it that can find the phone, and it's showing Maggie's phone's right out here. Let's, y'all
Laura, it
let's go
seemed that
get it.
the family all shared location with each other,
And he said,
so that makes sense.
no need. We have technology coming later today that we should be able to find it.
And he's like, but
And
I
just-
have it right
blew
here.
me away.
Can we just do it now?
I'm sitting here showing them where Maggie's phone is, but they won't take the time to walk with me or take this phone itself. I mean, I'd give them the phone to go find it. So I walk over, I knew
No wonder
Duffy
he's
Stone,
annoyed.
he was the solicitor, I knew one of his investigators. I walked over to them, said the exact same thing, and they immediately said, absolutely, let's go find this thing before the battery goes dead.
And that's what they did.
And what happened?
That we did that.
And
Well, we started walking down the back entrance or the kennel entrance, if you will. And as we were, and at that time, the agent was holding the phone, you know, I'm looking at it with him. And when it pings, it creates a dot or a location. And that dot jumped from right at the end of that road, down the road, I don't know, maybe a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile.
And they went and
so
found
we
it.
walked back.
And we heard
got
from that
into a
agent.
car, and drove down to where it was showing the phone.
And that was one of the solicitor
And-
investigators,
And
And
not
I rode
SLED.
with those agents, the solicitor's office agents.
Was the phone
'Cause everybody was on the
located
scene.
on the side of the
Oh,
road?
absolutely. We found it in a matter of minutes.
Okay. Do you remember how it was collected? I mean, were you present when it was collected?
I was, so I was on, there's a cow pasture on one side and it's wooded on the other side, and I was on the side that the cow pasture's on, if you will. And I heard him say, "I got it." And so, of course, I walked back beside his car, and I'm good ways from it, but I see him over there, and I think he took either some ribbon or some flagging or flagging tape and marked the phone. And I don't think he touched it. I think he left it right where it was, called SLED, and maybe at that time, maybe they had been communicating, but SLED had blocked off the road at this point, and one of the agents came up and picked the phone up. And I don't know which agent. Again, I didn't know him.
Did any law enforcement officer ask you if you knew the password?
Yes, so once they, and I'll say this, so they did take pictures of it while it was on the ground before they touched it. They picked it up, I think they had gloves on, they picked it up, brought it back to the trunk of the car, and opened it up in power zone, and they then asked, what's the password? And of course, I didn't know it.
Did you find out the password?
I did. I called Alec, and he gave me the password. I repeated it to the agent. They put the password in and said, "Is open."
So Alec
And then they
provided
did.
you the password that you passed to the agents, and it opened the phone? Is that
Yes, sir.
correct?
That's correct.
And that's what we heard from agents as well. I saw a really good question about why no GPS data from Maggie's phone. It got overwritten between the time that they collected the phone and the time that they dumped the phone. So that is why.
John Marvin,
They put it in
were you
airplane
aware of
mode,
the
but it was still getting
user
GPS
release that was
location.
issued that morning,
So
Tuesday, June 8th, that the public had
That's
no
why.
need to be alarmed or concerned for their safety?
Yes, sir.
Well, what was your reaction to that?
I mean, it's quite baffling. It still is. Two people have been killed, and they're telling me that everybody's safe. That tells me that whoever's done this is in jail, and they are 100% positive. And because if they're not in jail, nobody's safe.
or they believe Paul was being targeted for the boat accident, and that's not going to put the general public at risk. I don't know. Again, I think it goes both ways. But I get where John Marvin's saying, how do you say the public's safe when you don't know who did
Did you
it?
go back to the residence?
that's
at-
their
at
basis of a
Moselle,
rush to judgment.
After finding the phone?
Or one of
Go back
theirs.
up to the house?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did SLED agents come through and search it while you were present?
They did. I don't know how long I'd been back up there, but they came and we kind of talked in the playroom, or I think some have described it as the gun room.
You call the gun room the
Yeah,
playroom?
they talked about
I
that they
have
needed to
questions.
come in the house and search for things.
And did you escort, I think it was Agent McAllister, throughout the house?
Yes, it was Katie McAllister.
Escort, follow.
And did she tell you what she was looking for?
You
Well,
followed.
initially, she says, well, the way she presented it was, there were so many people in the house. She said, listen, I don't want to just go barging in and make everybody run out of the house, but
But you
I'm
should
gonna
have.
take my badge off, my gun off, and if you would, just walk me through each room. And, particularly I'm looking for 12-gauge shotgun, guns, and 300 blackout, and the ammunition for those calibers.
And as you're walking through the house with her, it appeared she was looking for other things besides just guns.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could tell she's looking, because she looked in spaces that guns wouldn't fit, so it makes sense that she could be looking for something else.
Such as what?
Sorry about the freezer.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Well, I understand.
He's
but
like, I
you
don't know,
said
I'm not law
spaces. Did
enforcement.
she look in the
Well, I mean,
bathrooms and
I
tubs?
opened up up in the upstairs area, there's some cabinets that, a couple of them are pretty small that, she could find ammunition in there, but I don't know how you would get a gun in there.
Did you search bathrooms?
She did. Well, I took her through every room in the house.
Right.
I mean, every single room.
Did you observe her looking in sinks and toilets and?
So, yes, sir. what I observed is, like the shower, for example, it's a door, it's not an open shower. She opened the door and she looked around and, she was looking at, she easily would have known there was no gun in it when she opened it, but it was obvious that she was looking a little deeper.
Right. What kind of guns were there at Moselle?
Well,
The limit does not exist, Jim. The limit
it
does
sounds
not
like guns
exist.
of all kinds, rifles, shotguns. I've seen bow and arrows. I've seen crossbows. Most anything that you would hunt with.
Right. And were guns mostly in the gun room, to your knowledge, when you were over there?
Well, when I went through the house, we identified, I remember one gun in particular that was in the bedroom, a shotgun. I picked it up and said, you need to take this one, and we looked at it, and it was a 20 gauge, and she said, no, put that one back. So I put it back. So predominantly all the guns were in the gun room or playroom.
Right. I sort of an aside, briefly, do you hunt with Alec over the years?
I have.
And did he have a go-to gun, to your knowledge, that he would use?
Not to my knowledge.
When's the last time you ever seen him hunt with a 12 gauge?
I'd say that when he bird hunt, he's either shooting a 20 gauge or a 28. There was a time, and please don't ask me when, but I would say it was a few years prior to this that we were turkey hunting on another piece of property down on the Savannah River, and I know he was hunting with a 12 gauge then, but I don't know whether it was his gun or somebody else's.
Did that gun have a sticker on it, do you remember?
It did. And
Do you remember what the sticker said?
no, I don't remember what the sticker said, but I do remember teasing Alec that when you're turkey hunting, you don't want to be seen, and, big sticker on the side of your barrel is kind of like waving a white flag to a turkey.
Did you serve as somewhat of a liaison or the point person with SLED and the family initially?
I don't know that I'd call it a liaison or point person, but I absolutely, I'd become to know Agent David Owens, and I absolutely told David, I said, listen, if you need anything from me or anybody and you can't get in touch with them, you reach out to me. I will either see to it that they call you back, I will see to it that you get the answers that you're looking for, or I will put you in touch with the person you're trying to reach. So I did make myself available.
And did Alec give, to your knowledge, carte blanche to law enforcement to search anywhere that they wished?
Oh, he did. In fact, before I was going to just do something, I knew that to be the case, but yes, he confirmed it with me. Anything they needed, anytime they needed it.
And you provided consent to search the house the afternoon on the 8th on his behalf, did you not?
I did. And I've consented every time they've ever asked.
We'll get to that. Were you ever asked to provide consent or see if you could obtain consent for any law enforcement to search your mom's house where Alec had been the night before?
Say that to me one more time.
Did any law enforcement ask you to consent or obtain consent so that law enforcement could search Almeda, and I'm talking about on the 8th, because Alec had just been there the night before?
Right.
Did anybody ask you, hey, can we go search Almeda?
No one asked anything.
Okay. If asked, would you have obtained consent for law
I
enforcement?
mean,
I would have given them consent, and I would have taken them over there just like I did
I
at
don't
Alec's
know if you
house,
could
and I
have
would
given
have
them
helped
consent.
facilitate
Who's
the
legally
search
in
to
charge
show
of
them
bombs?
areas that they may not know about.
Dad couldn't have given consent because he was incapacitated. Does somebody have power of attorney over mom and dad? Because I don't know if you
Did-
could have given
you
consent
remember,
to search mom and dad's
law
house.
enforcement
They would have
SLED agent
squashed it.
Coming to your
And they didn't
Greenfield
have enough
property on June
probable
the
cause
10th?
to get a subpoena.
Yes, sir, I do.
And
I think even if
and
they had given
what was that
consent, the
about?
defense would have fought it. I don't know.
I assume they coordinated it with Alec or Randy. I'm not sure who they coordinated it with, but yes, my understanding is they were coming to interview me, Randy, Alec, Buster. I think that's it. But they wanted to do interviews with all of us.
And did everyone congregate there at Greenfield?
Yes, sir. We were at Greenfield. Of course, you know, we're staying there because of all this, and so it keeps me close to Hampton. So, but yes, we all congregated there.
And when the
All.
agents arrived, did they come inside and sit down and talk with each other of you, or how did that work?
No, sir. I offered them to come inside. It was, as you can imagine, it was hot. I said, come in, and, you know, offered them a drink of water, whatever, just being polite. And they said, no, you know, we would like to go ahead and start our interviews
And where did the interviews take place?
in their cars.
And were they all done it simultaneously?
Yes, sir.
And how many SLED agent cars were out there? Do you remember?
Well, there was one for each person they were interviewing, and I would go ahead and guess that there were probably 2 or 3 more.
And I'm not sure that we need to actually play this, but have you been in the courtroom and you've heard this audio tape of Alec being interviewed on that June the 10th, where he states something, either I did him so bad or they did him so bad? Have you heard that?
I have.
And you know Alec's voice?
I know his voice very well.
And what is he saying on that tape?
Crystal clear, they did him so bad. I mean,
And had you heard him say that before his interview that day?
you know, I think I heard him say it either the night of or the day after, but I've also heard him say it many times after.
Well
Huh.
before this trial started or anything?
Well before any of this, that's right. When he was staying and living with
He's
us.
filling in the
or
express
between
remorse.
My brother and
I've heard him
us.
say it over and over.
After Maggie and Paul were murdered on that night of June 7th, were you or other family members with Alec for the most part, you know, for that week and the week after that?
You talking about the days following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I was. I made a conscious effort to be with him. I mean, as devastating as it was for me, it was 1,000 times worse for him. So I knew as a brother I needed to be there for him, and I was. You know, of course I didn't sleep with him, but when we were awake, he was. You know, I may not be standing beside him, but I
Fair.
would be in the room together. Or if we needed to go to the gas station, if he wanted dip, I'd ride with him. I just knew I just thought that's what I needed to do.
What was his
That's what my
demeanor
chips need. The chips need some dip.
in the immediate aftermath of these murders?
I haven't done the
Johnny,
all-dressed chips with dip.
That night or days or
That night, the next
An
day,
onion?
the day after?
like I just said, he is.
Onion can be real good.
You can use words that he was destroyed. I heard somebody say he was broken. You can use any word you want to use to describe, but
I know
can
that's not the
promise
type
you,
of dip he's talking
words
about.
don't do it justice. I would have to create a new word to describe how distraught he was. It's
And
terrible.
And then carry it forward all through the summer. Did he?
No, I
how
know
was
he's
he
talking about
coping
tobacco, but this
afterwards, say,
chat comes back
later
to
June and
snacks.
July and
We just
going
come
forward?
back to
You know,
snacks.
It's hard to tell.
Or songs.
I thought at times I thought he was doing okay. Other times it would just be sheer grief. I mean, just uncontrollably crying.
Yeah,
and
grief's
just,
an asshole like
Of course,
that.
it makes me cry. As y'all can tell, I'm a pretty emotional guy. But we would cry together. And there's no answers. And there's nothing I could say to make it better other than just
Grief
hug him.
sucks.
Did
I wonder if they're going to ask
did he
about the
start losing
roadside.
weight?
Oh yes, sir. Absolutely.
Was he eating,
Well,
sleeping?
He was pretty heavy going into this.
Right.
And he lost a good bit of weight. I don't know how many pounds, but it became very obvious in a fairly short period of time he lost weight.
I skipped over something in my outline, and I apologize, but But going back on the evening of June 7th, or early morning hours, did folks who were there at Almeida raise questions about perhaps the murder? Maggie and Paul were somehow associated with
What?
You mean in Moselle?
Yeah, the Moselle.
What?
Going
That's
back
so
to
leading. I don't even know
on
where
the
we
evening
went.
of June 7th and
What?
June 8th, did folks at Moselle
What?
raise issues or associate the
Are you
potential
eliciting
motive for
hearsay?
the murder to be related to the boating accident in some form?
Well, I heard it.
What?
I heard
What?
it numerous times that night. I heard it at
Compound.
Moselle, and I actually heard it by, well, Chief Alexander mentioned it. You know, once I got over the chaotic part of describing what we were doing, why I needed to get to Moselle, he asked me he's driving in front of me, and he asked me, do you think it's related to the boat accident? Of course, Greg, I don't know. I don't know anything about what's happened.
Greg's the one whose trial they went to.
Were you were aware of the boating accident and Paul's charges?
Yes, sir.
Weren't you aware? And was there a backlash in the community over that?
Well, it was a lot of backlash. I would not say quite as much in the community, but is on social media and media inflamed rumors is the way I would describe it.
Right.
Media inflamed rumors.
It was just totally blown out of proportion, and I don't want to downplay the accident, but what they were saying about the stuff about Paul and Alec, it was just totally inflamed.
It's like y'all just don't understand. This is how we do things down here. Y'all are making it more than it is.
You asked about the boating accident, so.
Yep,
I
he
told
did.
y'all that I called Michael Paul, my friend, to make sure I could go to the crime scene the next morning. Well, Michael Paul is one of my best friends, if not my best friend. I called him that night while we were still down at the crime scene, not because he's in law enforcement,
be
not
hard-
because
that's
of
gonna be
anything, because
hearsay.
he's my friend. And I actually told him on the phone, I said, MP is what I said, MP, I don't even know why I called you. I just needed to talk to somebody. And we talked and, cried a
shit
little bit
happens,
after
you
I
call your
he didn't know
bestie.
what had happened, so I told him, and I cried, and you could tell he was upset. But
Hearsay.
in that conversation, he asked me also, do
Hearsay.
you think it could be related to the boating accident?
Well,
Objection.
it doesn't matter. Shit's out of the horse now. You objected too late. The question elicited hearsay. You can't
Switching
object
gears a
once he's
little bit.
knee deep in the
Marvin, when-
hearsay. We knew that was coming.
Talk to you about visiting at your mom's house.
It
mom
just
and dad's
is.
house. There's,
That objection was way too late.
where do you routinely park, or where do you park sometimes when going over to your mom
I
and
mean,
dad's
he's
house?
heard all of the testimony about it.
You asking where I park?
You and
All the
others,
witnesses
in the
listening in
family.
on everything is so weird.
Well, there's a couple of places you can park, depending on who's there, whether there's other cars there, You can either park at what you call the carport, and there's a big dirt area beside it. You can park there, walk up to the side door, or you can pull around to the back corner, park there.
Could do whatever.
We all use both spots.
I'm going to pull up and look at it on your screen.
As a matter of fact, I told you it's my mom's birthday. I went there yesterday. I pulled right into the back of the house, but I didn't turn around. I circled the house. So
Okay.
there's
So I'm going to pull up State's
All right.
Exhibit 524. It's an
Matt
evidence.
Bond said,
Doug
no wonder
and
they're
Doug's
demolishing the Idaho
538.
house. Yes.
This is,
I think the Idaho house is probably something that cannot be
The,
cleaned
GPS.
or salvaged, practically.
OnStar data.
And I think after what's
And
happened,
Doug, if you'll blow up
nobody is
around
going
the
to want to
house,
stay
please,
there.
sir. Thank you.
All dressed chips with dip. That's gilding the lily. Yes, Deb, it is.
Mr. Murdaugh, this is your mom's house, and
I'm
this
here
is
for it.
GPS data from the night
They
of June
were
7th. You
cleared.
see that, the red line there?
it's pretty blurry on my screen. I don't know about y'all's.
Well, you want back it out a little bit, Doug?
Alexandria, get
All
some
right.
rest.
Is that better?
Well, yes, it's still blurry, but I can see.
Where is that in relation to your mom's house?
You're talking about the, right there where the arrow's pointing?
Yes, sir.
That is at the back corner of the house.
Okay.
That would be exactly where I parked yesterday.
All right. And if you
It's
pull
blurry
up,
on our screens too.
Exhibit 136.
Elisa, no, with regard to Maggie's phone in airplane mode,
This would be
law
defendant's
enforcement put it
exhibit
in airplane
136
mode
evidence.
when they collected it to try to prevent data being overwritten, but they didn't take out the SIM card, so
Tell me
data
where
was
that is.
overwritten.
That's same area. That's
It wasn't
what I'm
in
talking about.
airplane
Is that
mode
the
when they
same
found
area that
it.
we just saw on the last exhibit with the red dots?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Generally speaking, I mean, it's such a wide open area, so when you pull up, you're not like pulling into the exact same spot each time to where you're creating a road or whatnot. It's just a nice grassy area. You pull up, go up to the back door, and you're right there at the back of the house.
And why do you go to the back of the house?
That's, when my dad was alive, there's a little breakfast room there with a recliner in it. He was either in that recliner, at the table eating, in the bed, or not at home. I mean, that literally was his.
Right. So Doug, if you pull up defendants 135.
So everything's at the back of the house.
Right.
I mean, it's just, they don't use, it's a large home, and they just don't, as
Use
old as
any
they
of it.
are. Well, my mom can't get out of bed, but as old as they are, they don't go to the front.
I'm sorry, just skip that. 131, defendants 131 in evidence, please.
Michelle said, I really struggle with how all the witnesses have been permitted to sit through this trial. Is that
Yeah,
normal?
just-
No, I've never seen
For
it.
the same area, photographed from a different
It might be
direction.
normal for
Yes,
this
sir.
jurisdiction,
Now,
but it's sure weird to
What's that
me.
structure that we see in the background past that big oak tree?
Because you hear all the
That was
witnesses
my
saying,
dad's
oh, it's-
cookhouse, or
oh,
man
so-and-so said,
cave,
what
as some
so-and-so
people would call
said.
it. That's,
Okay.
yeah.
It's weird.
And-
It's weird to me.
And how far is
that
that
the witnesses
from,
all hear each other.
from the house, roughly?
I would guess 60 to 80 yards.
Okay. And that's, and is it open around there? I mean, from the photo, is that accurate?
Oh, it's
depiction?
absolutely.
All right.
That whole area is a grassy area with oak trees and pecan trees.
Let's see some more question. Jay said saw AM use 401k to pay for defense. Have you heard that? I haven't, but it wouldn't surprise me. That's something they can do. And a couple of you have mentioned that.
So Marvin, I want to go to Labor Day weekend of 2021. Where were you that weekend? Do you remember?
Labor Day weekend 21.
When you heard your
Out
brother
in
was
the
shot in the head,
hospital.
where were you?
Okay, yeah, yes. So I had been out west fishing, and I came in on Saturday night.
I love that they call it out west, just like
And
we
did,
called it back east.
Did you, prior to Labor Day weekend 2021, were you aware as to whether or not Alec had a opioid addiction?
No, sir.
Huh.
Did
that's
you
interesting.
transport Alec, drive Alec from the hospital in Savannah to a detox facility in Atlanta on that weekend, or?
Well, I believe it would have been on that Monday.
Right.
I was not driving. Randy and I took him. Randy was driving, and I was in the back. But yes, sir, we did take him to a detox facility.
And where was the facility located?
Just outside of Atlanta.
Okay. And what was, can you describe for the jury Alec's condition, like physical condition in the car?
Yes, sir. So when I met Randy over in Savannah, he had Alec, and I got in the car, or Randy's truck with him. I'd never seen anything like it. I've seen television shows of talking about the leg twitching and the squirminess, if you will, and that's the first thing. I mean, you could just tell he was sweating. He was thrashing about. Jim,
Did he turn
I don't know how
around?
much detail you want me to go into.
What, did he turn around in the seat of the car, and what was he doing?
Yeah, so maybe halfway there, at one point, he had taken his seatbelt off and he had his head down where your fanny would be in the seat, and is trying to stretch his legs and just kind of steady, just like thrashing them and kicking them. It's just, again, I've seen TV, but I've never seen something like this in real life.
And was he able to control himself?
No, sir. I said about detail. So he messed himself.
Yes, it's leading.
He had diarrhea. He just couldn't control it.
And then,
And I say diarrhea, I'm not talking about at a restaurant. I'm
Okay.
talking about in the car, in his pants.
okay,
Thanks for that, John Marvin.
and after he spent some time in the facility in Atlanta, did you and your brother go pick him up and take him to another facility in Orlando, Florida?
Yes, sir, we did.
Do you remember that?
Yes, sir, I did.
On the drive to Orlando, do you remember anything happened that stands out to you?
You know, so that drive, he was much different. He was more subdued. It was not the thrashiness, not the twitching, not the jerkiness, if you will. I don't know the words that you would use.
Sorry
for
for
that,
everyone
but
that was
that's
eating.
what
I
I'm
was
saying.
too.
The only thing that really stood out for me is he slept a lot of the time, but he woke up
Amber, no, they don't.
from sleeping. And when he woke up, I mean, he jerked forward, and you could just tell that, I mean, it was sheer terror. He just woke up out of a horrible, horrible dream, and I believe it was him dreaming about what he found with Paul and Maggie.
That's so speculative.
Keep going a little further, Mr. Murdaugh. And
Okay.
sometime in September, did SLED actually
You're
come and
interpreting his
search the house
dreams?
at Alameda?
Yes, sir,
All right.
And were you present?
I was.
Okay, and you
I know, Chad.
did,
I know.
were you informed as to what items were seized during that search?
I was informed of one item that was seized.
And what item was that?
It was described as a coat,
What kind of coat?
The tarp.
but they didn't tell me what kind of coat.
Okay, and and did they tell you where the coat was found?
Yes, sir. So I would assume that the searching of the house, all that was winding down. So Agent David Owens and I believe Randy was outside near us, but he may have been talking to somebody else. I'm not sure. May have been talking to another agent. I'm not sure. But David Owens, or Agent Owens, came up to me and said, we found a coat back on the property. Do you know anything about it? And I said, well, David, I said, if you found it back on the property, I said, it's a large piece of property, some 400 something acres. I said, my dad rides this Kubota side by side. It's probably his. And I said, and if you show it to me, I can try to identify it. And of course, he said he couldn't show it to him or wouldn't show it to me. I'm not sure what it was.
Were you sometime later asked to view
I think they should have asked
blue
him.
raincoat?
I was. Well, I was asked to view a raincoat and listen to an audio tape.
Of the kennel?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay,
On
so we saw
the
it.
blue raincoat, were you informed where it was seized from?
Well, I knew where it was seized from because he had already told me. But I was, this instance, I was told that they wanted us to, or when I say us, they asked Randy, Lynn,
They would have
and
had
I to
familial
go
DNA
view
on it.
Coat and the
If his
tape.
dad used it.
At this
Yes,
point-
Chad.
I knew where it had been recovered, but they said, we want you to view a coat that had been recovered out of a closet.
And was that different from what you were led to believe when you
Oh, absolutely.
had,
What?
had you ever,
If we're just leading, can we just what?
did they ever anybody provide an explanation about why you were giving two different locations where the coat was found?
To this day, no one's told me that.
Well, obviously, Jim, somebody made a mistake.
Photo of the coat that they showed you, had you ever seen that raincoat before?
No, sir.
Was it the blue raincoat that,
Well, it certainly looked similar to the one, I saw a picture, I didn't see the coat itself. But it certainly looked to be similar or the same.
had you ever seen it before?
No, sir.
Did you recognize what closet it came out of from photos during this trial?
Well, I saw that, and I think I know what closet they're referring to.
Well,
There's
let
only
me
two,
ask you,
I'm sorry.
The closet as you go up on the first flight of stairs before you go at the landing, right there, it's, what's kept there?
Clothing, not everyday clothing that's more or less in storage, junk.
Right.
Stuff.
You know, it's not a, it's not
Stuff
a,
and
first of all,
stuff.
my dad wouldn't climb stairs even if he could, but he couldn't.
Right.
So
The,
stuff and stuff.
There's some testimony that there's GSR on that raincoat. Got any idea how there could be GSR on clothing in your dad's closet at Almeda?
Calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Yep.
Did
There's an
your
objection.
dad carry guns
One.
around with him?
No, not in the sense that you're saying. So he was not like
Not
Paul
what you're
that always had guns with him.
Not the way you're trying
You
to
know, he
imply,
would-
Jim.
He would keep a gun if he went
That's funny.
dove hunting, for example, and he went on one dove hunt, that gun may ride with him for 2 months. He just would stay, he just would,
Just
same
wouldn't
with
put it
golf
away?
clubs. He went back when he would play golf. He just,
Not.
During
there's a bunch of junk in his truck.
during hunting season, was there normally a gun in the back seat?
During hunting season, I would say that there usually would be.
No, that wasn't Metters. That's the other guy.
And did he
In fact,
have,
during hunting season, because he always loved to go on a bird hunt.
and did he have
Bird hunt?
a specific gun?
I think he
that
said bird hunt.
used frequently?
Closed
Oh, he
caption
had one gun.
disagrees.
And did that gun have a name?
It did, it was called Bo Whoop.
We heard.
And did he clean it often?
I've never seen him clean it. He got that gun in I believe in 1957 for his
Well,
high school graduation, and
look,
he used it for
bird
every
hunting.
game that he chased.
Look,
But I'm sure it got cleaned
It had to
somewhere
have gotten
along the way,
clean.
but I'd never seen him clean it, and I still haven't seen him clean it.
it would have had to have gotten clean, or it wouldn't still be working
know how
from
the thing still works.
1957. Just saying.
Along the way, have you been receiving updates from SLED on their investigation in the Maggie and Paul's murder?
Usually when I call, I would call Agent Owens and ask for updates, and he would try to provide some updates. It almost always seemed like there was stuff that he really, I don't know. I don't know whether he didn't know or just wasn't at liberty to say at the time. I'm not sure. But yeah,
My weather's getting feisty.
He would try to give updates as best as possible.
And you provided information on evidence that they had against your brother?
I have been, yes, sir.
What?
Has-
Some of it.
And some of the information that you've been provided turned out not to be accurate information?
What?
Yes, sir.
What type information?
Well,
Is this hearsay? I got
I was
questions.
told
though.
at one point
Yep.
that there was a T-shirt that he was wearing.
Oh,
Can I back up and tell you how we got into this conversation?
Sure.
So
Okay.
I'm having a meeting with SLED.
it sure does.
Yes, sir. Nature of the objection.
Call for your sir.
Yep.
Statement of an opponent, Your Honor, agent of. It's a statement of a party opponent.
Party opponent.
Agent of the party opponent.
Agent
Agent.
of the party opponent.
What?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have you take a break now. Please do not discuss the case.
Lawyers in the chat, have you ever heard of the investigating officer referred to as a party opponent? I'm very, because I sure haven't. That's the young prosecutor, his face went, "Mer?" My face also went, "Mer?" We'll see. That's not attractive in this. I love that his judicial assistant immediately has the code out for him. This is going to go to the shirt with the blood spatter. The court is still in session. Yeah, y'all shut up. Court is still in session. God, it's the loudest audience.
All right, everybody be seated.
Let's go. Statement of a party opponent. We're going to pull up some hearsay rules.
Here, this hear this objection again.
Hearsay.
Stays objecting, calls for hearsay.
And the
Your
defense?
response to the, Mr.
Yes, Your Honor.
Just a moment, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Conrad's response to Mr. Griffin.
Your Honor, I think his argument was it's an admission by a party opponent. And I don't think we're talking about.
Party opponent.
Right, and the subsection 801D2, I think is what we're referencing, and it talks about admission by a party opponent. It doesn't necessarily talk about the statement. And I think what we're getting into are some statements by particular law enforcement officers.
Was made by the
already been on
party
stand, and
in an
I don't think
individual
those are admissions
or representative
to the
capacity?
issue that's of relevance in this case.
Was made by a party's agent or employee on a matter within the scope of the relationship while it
Your Honor,
existed.
directly relevant. The statements relate to evidence that they've told the family they have against Mr. Murdaugh.
Directly relevant?
Yes, sir.
So the objection not based on relevance.
Well, I thought that's what, so a statement of a party opponent is non-hearsay under the definition of hearsay. Your Honor, it's, I don't have the rule in front of me, but under.
The state of South Carolina is a party opponent in
Yeah.
this case?
And
I mean,
SLED is the
Was
investigative
made by the
agency.
party's agent or employee
Yes, sir.
on a matter within the scope of the relationship.
If, otherwise, the rule would not apply in a criminal case. I mean, that's.
Well, it applies
I mean, it
against the
has to be
defendant. For parity, it should
the
apply against the
investigative
state.
agency. I'm not asking for Colleton County statements or it's the,
Well,
Sleds.
you've gotten those in already, the newspaper statements, Colleton County's call to the newspaper.
He
or
has.
whatever.
That's
Yes.
true.
What else, Mr.
I've never seen
Conrad.
anyone use this.
I'd also object for the relevance as well, Your Honor, because the state has not offered the shirt and evidence.
The state's like, oh, wait, back up,
And,
back up. Whoop, 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 whoop,
The
whoop.
defense is attempting to kind of backdoor here, and it simply doesn't go to any issue, anything that's issued in this
He's
trial.
already testified to the shirt.
Well, to the shirt, but he's trying to get evidence.
What was told to him
and
about
maybe
the
we
shirt.
need to proffer it to see exactly what he'd say, but my
I'm interested to see how this argument
We're
goes.
talking about a report by Mr. Bevel, which we've talked about several times in this case, and I'd object to the relevance and to, particularly with Mr. Murdaugh bringing it up.
All right. Well, tell me again what you're asking the witness,
Yeah,
or
yes,
proffer it to the witness. Yes.
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 So, Mr. Murdaugh, what information were you provided by, was it a SLED agent that provided you the information?
Yes, sir.
You were asking him about Agent Owens. He's a SLED agent. Yes.
I love how many
what
offers
information
we've
were you
done.
provided that
Very
that-
exciting.
leading up to
Very,
this
very
that
exciting.
that turns out to be inaccurate?
Right, and is it okay for me to speak for you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So what I was asking, I was saying, I wanted to back up to get to where I
However,
was-
SLED
where
might
I
have
was
just
getting
lied
this
to him.
information. So I'd been called to SLED, not headquarters, but their
To
office
try to
in
get info
Waldenburg
from
to
him.
view the blue coat and to listen to an audio. After my interview with them, Captain Ryan Neal, I believe we were in his office, is the one that, and I'm going to use my terminology here, but described the white T-shirt covered in blood, even went so far as to describe that Ellick took the bottom of it and wiped his face with it, and that's how they knew he was involved. That's how they knew he was there. And I don't know where the question goes after
Can I
that.
answer your question, or are you trying to dig more out of him?
That's it.
All right, and what's your objection?
I renew my objection to
His
the
objection's
relevance.
still hearsay. Nope, no.
Nothing has been put, this jury hasn't heard any evidence about any blood being on this T-shirt,
Yeah, they have.
and the state has not offered any reports to
The defense
suggest as
has.
such.
The objection is overruled.
Yep.
It's going to take 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Hearing. Step down.
Yeah, I think it's a fair. I have never seen anyone use
going on there.
Then
If this
again,
one
it doesn't
work, how about
often
this
come
one?
up much, but I have it doesn't come up much at all because it's very rare that I have a case where law enforcement has talked to one of the defense witnesses and told them anything at all. But I've never seen them use party opponent. In theory, it should go both ways. Of course it should. If you can offer the statements of the defendant against the defendant, then why can't you offer the investigating officer's statements against the state? I like the argument. And the judge is like, yep, fair. And I'm like, all right, here we are. So here's what happened. Let's back up and refresh real quick. John Marvin's testifying and they want to ask him about the state misleading John Marvin about the shirt being covered in blood. I think the state's already elicited that testimony about the white shirt because the state did the testing with the stuff that turns purple, and then that was presumptive for blood. But then when they did the confirmatory testing, that wasn't presumptive for blood. But law enforcement told the grand jury, it seems, about the presumptive tests, not the confirmatory tests, and they can cross-examine him on it. Also, is law enforcement allowed to lie to John Marvin? Yes, but I think law enforcement told him what they believed at the time was the presumptive test for blood showed that the shirt was covered in blood. We know that the confirmatory test showed that the shirt was not covered in blood. So, yes, law enforcement can use deception, but also I think they believed it at the time when they said it to him. So, when you get to the rules against hearsay and statements that are not hearsay, statements of an opposing party is not hearsay. Let's go through all the exceptions to an opposing party statement. And again, when the defense objected to this, the state won their objection and the defense won their objection the other way around. So the judge has been consistent on the opposing party exception to the hearsay rules. So under 801(2), an opposing party statement, the statement is offered against an opposing party and was made by a party in an individual or representative capacity. B is one the party manifested that it adopted and believed to be true, was made by a person whom the party authorized to make a statement about the subject, that is the press release statements, was made by the party agent or employee. I don't think you can call the investigating agent anything other than an agent of the state. I think fair, novel, but a good argument on Jim Griffin. And fair. Doesn't come up a lot. Rob's like, I'm stealing that immediately. Doesn't come up a lot. I appreciate it. So the judge is like, nope. He went to the rules too and was like, yep, that's coming in. So I don't think I've ever seen it that way. But normally you're not eliciting investigating officers' statements through a witness. You just admit them through the investigating officer who already testified, but told John Marvin the shirt was covered in blood, though we've already heard that they told the grand jury that too. So I like the argument, a good argument by Jim Griffin. And the judge was like, yep. They removed the jury for the afternoon break. It is 4:18 on the East, and we'll see. But the judge has been really, really fair. So yes, law enforcement can use trickery. I just don't know if it's a good look on law enforcement if they're using trickery with John Marvin, who wants to know what happened to his sister-in-law and his nephew, and they're lying to him about how much Alec is involved. But also, I think at the time, they believed that white shirt was covered in blood based on the presumptive tests, and it took them forever to do the confirmatory testing. They presented that, it seems, to the grand jury before the confirmatory testing were in, and they never started wondering about the blue clothes, which Alec testified to, and the defense is going to argue. They never started worrying about the clothes in the kennel video until they realized that the white shirt confirmatory testing came back that it was not, in fact, blood, that had rendered a false positive. So the other thing we learned, yes, chat, that there is a keypad on the side door going into the gun room. And we heard on the 911 call what sounded like a keypad. It sounded like a keypad to a safe or something. It has bothered me this whole trial. What about the keypad? Well, it seems that there's a keypad to enter the side door by the gun room. We hear on the 911 call Alex say he's going to go and get a gun. He goes down. We hear a keypad. And then I think that that's probably the keypad to get in to the side of the house to get into the gunroom directly instead of coming in the front door. So that kind of closed a loop for me that John Marvin's like, I don't remember if I went in the front door or the side door. There's a keypad on the side door. And we know that the only side door on the house from previous testimony and from the Captain America video is the side door that goes up into the gunroom. So there's the keypad that we heard, or at least I suspect. It is my presumption that we heard that keypad. It raises another question from that hangry mama. Who all had the code? Don't know. Don't know who had the code. Don't know at all. So it looks like he's innocent. Gene, I don't know about all of that. I think I'm still I got a whole bunch of questions. I still have a whole bunch of questions, but I don't think the white shirt is, if he did this, I don't think he was wearing the white shirt when he did, because I think the argument that Alec Murdaugh wore those clothes and somehow cleaned them and put them back on and they were fresh is the most ridiculous thing ever. There's no way there's time for him to freshly launder a shirt. I think that shirt was freshly laundered and he grabbed it and put it back on whenever he changed clothes. But now we've got him testifying that at some point he clearly showered and changed, because we have the blue shirt in the Snapchat video from earlier in the day. The shirt smelled freshly laundered, and that's what it is. All right, I'm going to answer some questions while the court is on break, and let's go with that. Jen Haft said parsley, parsnip, parlay. That should be the code. It is the code. The code has come. Stick to the code has now come up in this trial as well. We've had lots of callbacks from previous trials. Case, if you miss any of them, apparently you missed a lot, because now they're becoming interwoven. Casey Katz said John Marvin and Buster were seen on drone footage the morning after the murders, removing lots of guns from the lodge near the kennels. I think they were removing guns. The drone footage that I have seen is of them removing guns from the side door of the gunroom of the house. It makes sense to me, if the house was going to be left unattended after these murders, that they'd be removing the guns. The family's actions after they clear the crime scene is not on them. Law enforcement cleared the crime scene so early and never considered the house a crime scene that it's not on the family. It's just not on the family. It's not at all on them. Law enforcement told them to leave the kennels and go down to the house. So everybody in this house started picking up the pots and pans from dinner and started doing what they could to clean up and do something with their hands. And then Blanca came over the next morning and started to clean, and they've cleared the house as a crime scene because they never cordoned it off as a crime scene. Law enforcement never said to them, don't touch anything, don't move anything. So I'm not surprised that at some point guns were removed from the home. I don't know if that was the next day, but I also don't think Blanca moved in the next day. So the timing on that, I'm not sure. But law enforcement didn't stop them from doing it. So it's not on the family that they're cleaning. It's not their fault that they started cleaning up the crime scene. I believe that John Marvin thought that that's what he needed to do in a moment of grief, is to clean up the kennels. Law enforcement cleared it. Law enforcement shouldn't have cleared that crime scene so fast, but they did. And when they should have waited till well at the end of the next day. There was no reason not to. I think they could have removed the dogs out of the kennels and let them go with whoever's taking care of them without clearing that crime scene for people to come and clean up. But they cleared it. And once they cleared it, it's not anyone's bad that they're coming in and cleaning up. It's to be expected. Crime scene cleanup is left to the people that own the property. And this family went in and he decided that he was going to start trying to clean, because who knows why you do what you do when you are in grief. So I don't blame the law partners either for starting to clean up the kitchen. Nobody told them the house was a crime scene. They should have told everyone to leave or sit in the cars, but they let everybody in the house and they let everybody all up and everywhere, and they never told anyone to leave. So that's on law enforcement for not doing their job, not on the family. That's my thoughts about it. Is the keypad a big deal? No, it's just been a matter of question that nobody has answered that is stuck out in my brain because it's stuck out in my brain and we never got an answer. And this case has so many questions. I'm looking for as many answers as I can. It's very frustrating how few answers there are. Most of this case is, could be this, could be that. Okay, well, that could be this or that. Okay, well, this could be that or that. I just feel like once they thought that there was blood on the shirt, they just went, hey, there's blood on the shirt, it's him. And they didn't do the confirmatory testings till way after. And then the confirmatory testings came back and went, wah. I mean, where is it? It's not blood on the shirt. And then they went, shit. Now what do we do? I need to look at the timing of when the confirmatory test came back versus when they went to grand jury. Because the confirmatory test came back late. But yes, I think I agree with you that the keypad is an important bit, because if they're arguing that these are family guns and the keypad is on the gun room, how many people have access to the damn gun room? It seems to make sense versus arguing that Paul has just left guns from here to wherever and back. It's like, and people have access to the gun room, but nobody's argued that except for us. And we're not in this trial. Lauren A asked, what happens if a client admits their guilt to their lawyer? They admit their guilt to their lawyer, and that's about it. They do that. And then the lawyer knows that, and then that's it. That's all. The lawyer keeps that between them, and represents their client with zealous advocacy. There's more emotion from his uncle and aunt than anyone. Even his brother. We've definitely seen more true emotion, I think, from Maggie's sister and from John Marvin. We've seen quite a lot. And I think that's fair. John Marvin's like, I'm sorry, I'm emotional. I think he's done incredibly well as a witness. I think he's absolutely showed genuine emotion. I think the way that his memory works is very consistent with how people remember events, and how they testify to remembering events, even difficult events. He's not trying to fill in or explain his actions. And that's something that stands out. When you're trying to make actions make sense, or you're trying to explain or over-explain your actions, it rings to me as either you didn't do those actions, or or you didn't do exactly that, and you're trying to cover. When you're trying to explain your actions, you're like, I need to justify why I'm doing this. It goes kind of round that you maybe didn't really do that, or you're not exactly telling the truth about it. With John Marvin, it's like, I don't know why I did this. I just started doing it. It rings very true that you're just telling them the actions, and you don't feel the need to justify the action because it's a genuine action, and you're not trying to get someone to buy in to this is what you did because it's just what you did. So John Marvin, I think, is a very good witness in that. And it also shows, though, the jury what it looks like when somebody's like, I remember this, I heard this, I did this. The testimony is very different than Alex's testimony. I would have done this. I would have done that. I would have done it this way. John Marvin's showing that I did, or I didn't, or I remember, or I don't remember. So I think his testimony is good for a number of reasons. It's also good to show his emotions. Rosebud in the chat said, but he's not on trial for murder. He's still going to be tremendously nervous testifying. His brother is on trial for murder, accused of murdering his niece and nephew. It's still going to be a tremendously emotional thing. He's just not, or I get the sense that he's not trying to hide or over-explain his actions from watching it. Completely Partial News says, why hasn't prosecution asked anyone about Maggie consulting a divorce attorney? Is that not true? I think it's very possible that it's not true. I think that could be a rumor. But I also think that they can't prove it. It's hearsay depending on how people found out about it. If her sister knew about it, they would have asked her sister. So if her sister had known anything about that, they would have said. And then when we're looking at bringing in an attorney, that's privilege. So you can't go find an attorney. So I think we've seen, did I say niece? I didn't mean to say niece. So I don't think we've seen anything that proves that that's true. I think that is still in the realm of rumor. It's not been proven at this trial at all. So Father was just placed in hospice the day of the murders, and Alec turned off his phone for an hour. We don't know, Deb, that Alec turned off his phone. His phone stopped receiving things for an hour. So they're going to argue it was turned off, but it just stopped receiving for an hour. But yes, it does seem odd that if his dad's in hospice, he wouldn't be checking it. But John Marvin said his dad did not go to hospice on the 7th. He was in the hospital on the 7th. He didn't go to hospice till after that. Karen says it sounds like Alec and Paul were a lot alike, always very busy, misplacing things or leaving things behind. Perhaps Alec killed Paul. He was killing part of himself that is a failure. I don't know about that. That's all much deeper than we're going to hear about in this case because they don't do kind of a theoretical, but it's too theoretical for the jury to convict on. We love a bring the jury moment. Thanks, Your Honor. We're going to bring the jury. Sarah asked, will the jury visit Moselle? Yes. And I'm sure at the end of the court day today, we will hear more about when that will happen. If Alec is acquitted, can the state continue to investigate this case? I don't know if they will, but they can, or they can decide to retry him, or they can charge him with other charges. I need to see what the jury decides before I answer that better. But yes, they can continue to investigate. Yes, they can try him again. It all just depends. And Alec is totally immune to JMM's emotional testimony, which is interesting. Atomic Blonde said, can the prosecution ask JM about his cheating? I mean, about Alec's cheating? If it's not too tangential, I don't know if John Marvin is going to be a tremendously forthcoming witness for the prosecution. Mama Justice says, except we hear the keypad at the beginning of the 911 call when he was supposedly at the kennels headed to get a gun. I need to go back and listen to where the timing is because I didn't have anywhere to place the keypad. So now I need to go back and listen. Question, how does this help Alec? What about the testimony is beneficial?
The objection's overruled.
I think some of the testimony about SLED has been beneficial to the defense. I don't know, chat, put in what you think about this testimony in the chat. We've got 44,000 people here. We can just poll the audience.
When we broke, the question on the table was about a conversation that you had with a SLED agent regarding some matter of evidence. Can you provide your answer, please, sir?
Can you re-ask the question, sir?
As I was about to say, what led me to this conversation was SLED asked my brother, my sister, and I to come over to identify or attempt to identify a coat and a recording. And we did that. And so I did my interview with them. And then after the interview, we went into Captain Ryan Neal's, I think he's captain, but Agent Ryan Neal's office at the same SLED office. And in that office, or in his office, we were all in there.
Who's we all?
They made reference to the shirt that they said Alec was wearing. They told us that it was covered in blood. They went so far as to tell me on the police body cam that he takes his shirt and wipes his face, and that's how they knew that Alec was at the scene, that he was the one.
John Marvin, just finishing up, what was Alec's relationship with Maggie and Paul's parents?
The
Grandma
date
and
that
Papa
they
T, as we
told
heard.
Grandma and Papa T. that's
John
right.
Marvin
had
that
a
they
great
knew Alec was
relationship.
the one. I wonder what day that was. Did we know?
Alec and Papa T played golf together regularly. I mean, it's just a really good father-in-law, son-in-law relationship, and mother-in-law.
And have you,
I want to know the date.
They would travel together, vacation together with different places.
and have
I
you
just wonder if
stayed
they
in
were
contact
trying
with
to
them
get
as
John
best you
Marvin to
could?
say something about what he
Yes, sir.
knew.
Okay.
Oh, we communicate.
And just
Now,
briefly-
Papa T has taken ill and is homebound now.
I was going to ask you,
Yeah, he's had a stroke and is basically homebound. And Miss Kennedy stays at home and takes care of him. But they are wonderful people. Let me just go a little bit further. Wonderful people
These are Maggie's
in and
people.
of themselves, but their relationship.
And I don't
is
know if
absolutely
Maggie's
great.
family on her
Tamara, I want to go back
mother's
to
side are
that
Kennedys. I just
morning
don't know
of
which
June the 8th
Kennedy
when you were,
lineage. But that's come up
down
once or twice
at
in this
the
trial that Maggie's full name was
kennel
Branstad or
cleaning up.
Kennedy.
Do you remember making a promise that morning?
Well, Jim, as I've told y'all that, y'all know what I saw, y'all know what I was doing. It was difficult. It was nearly impossible. In my mind and out loud, I told Paul I loved him. I told him, I don't know, I loved him, and I promised him that I'd find out who did this to him. You just don't know what to do, but it was tough.
And you promised him you would find out who did this to him.
Yes, sir.
Danger, Jim.
Have you found out?
I have not.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. That's all the questions I have.
That was a very careful way to elicit an opinion that John Marvin
Mr. Murdaugh.
really
Good
has
afternoon.
no
I think you
grounds
agree
to
with me
give.
that no matter which way you cut it, your family suffered a great tragedy, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
And
Including the death of my dad and the sickness of my mom. I mean, it's tough.
and I'm sorry you and your family's been through this.
Well, thank you.
All right. And I think you testified a little while ago about the cooperation you and particularly your brother provided SLED. Is that correct?
Did I provide cooperation with SLED?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And to your knowledge,
I have and will continue to.
and to your knowledge, your brother was providing cooperation to SLED as well, correct?
I believe everyone in my family was, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And would you consider that cooperation full cooperation? Not only for yourself, but your brother as well, from what you have observed?
calls for speculation.
To me, full cooperation, yeah. I mean, it's wide open. You tell us what you need from me, and I'll provide it. And I told him I would provide it.
And from what you've observed, your brother was providing the same full cooperation as well, correct?
Huh.
Yeah, so I believe anytime that they ask to search something, anytime they ask to do something, they ask for information, it typically came to me, and yes, I would provide it.
Okay, I'm asking about your brother right now, I understand you.
He's asking for
To your
whether
knowledge, did
Alec
your
was
brother provide full
cooperative.
cooperation? Or did he tell you he was providing full cooperation?
Well, he didn't tell me, but it appeared to be obvious that by him giving them access to anything they asked for, that he was.
I don't know where he's going with this.
So when did you first learn that your brother was down at the kennels?
That's
just
where they're
before-
going with us.
2 days ago, with the rest of us?
Except
No,
that he lied about the
no.
kennels.
So obviously, I went for an interview with SLED, the one I told you about, where we talked about the shirt, talked about the blood, all that. That was the reason for me being there, was to hear that audio. And I saw the kennel, and of course, at that point, I heard his voice, and I knew that was him.
Okay. You knew that was him when you saw that video, correct?
That's correct.
Or listened to the video?
When I listened to it,
Right. And do you recall the date of that interview when you first listened to that video?
I do not.
All right. Would you disagree with me if I said it was August 12th of 2022?
I have no way to agree or disagree.
Or at least during the month of August of 2022?
Again,
He said he doesn't know.
I'm sure they have my interview recorded for that date, but
All right. Before August of 2022, at that interview. when
This
you heard
attorney
your brother's
wanders
voice-
so much.
Before August of 2022, at that interview, when you heard your brother's voice at the kennels, had he ever told you that he was down there just prior to the murders?
no, sir.
Did he ever tell you that afterwards?
Interesting.
After you listened to that video?
No, sir. And I'm trying to think if we've been able to have an opportunity to even speak.
Okay. Okay.
Since August? He wasn't in custody in
So
August.
you'd agree that if he had not told SLED that was not full cooperation, correct? If he had not told SLED that he was at the kennels just before the murders, he had not actually been fully
Fair.
cooperative.
What's your question?
Would you agree that that is not full cooperation?
By him not telling
lied?
SLED that he was at the kennel?
Yeah.
I would say that yes, he lied.
Okay. All right, so I don't want to go through the whole kind of vehicle shell game that we talked about earlier. It's confusing,
All right,
probably
so
to me
August
most of all, but
2022.
let's just focus on, so Paul's, what was Paul's normal daily driver? What vehicle did he drive on a daily basis?
On a normal basis, he drove a white F-150 Platinum.
Okay,
And let me confuse you a little bit more, as I drive the identical truck.
okay, all right. So you testified that Paul's F-150 Platinum was at Jimmy Butler's over the weekend, correct?
It was at
being
Jimmy
worked on at
Butler's.
Jimmy Butler's, that's correct.
And then Monday, there's a series of car swaps. I don't want to go through them, but at the end of the day, you end up in the F-250 farm truck, correct?
That's correct.
And Paul ends up in your F-150 Platinum.
Ultimately, he does. He drives from Mom's car back to Alameda and gets
I know
my
there's
truck.
several swaps.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
I'm just kind of talking at the end of the day. And he drove your F-150 back to Moselle, excuse me, that night, correct?
To Moselle, yes, sir.
And you testified that you came over
the
later that night
F-150
after
Platinum
Alex had
was
called you about
the brother's
murders,
car.
correct?
That's correct.
Where was your truck parked when you first got there? And we'll talk about how you got there in a minute, but where was Paul's truck?
Well, so first of all, that night.
Your truck, I'm sorry.
That's right, I know what you're saying. So when I got there, we didn't go anywhere near the house. I went straight to where everything was happening.
Okay.
As we went to the house later that night, I saw my truck. So it's probably 4 in the morning, whatever time we were, 3 or 4 in the morning.
Parked
It was
where?
parked in front of the house, normally where you would park
Okay,
cars.
so just kind of straight out the front door?
That's correct.
And the keys that Paul had been using, do you recall were they left in the truck or have any recollection of where those keys might have ended up?
Well, they were sitting in the ignition, I mean,
Okay.
same place I always leave them,
Okay,
because I drove it to Alameda that night.
all right. And meanwhile, you were in that.
With such a large
F-250
property, I'm
farm
not
truck,
surprised the
right?
keys are just in the
Short period of
ignition
time.
at all.
And that, refresh my memory, was
There's lots
that,
of
is that
vehicles.
white as well, or is
It's
that a different?
it's white as well, yes, sir.
And it's broke down on you on the way to Moselle, correct?
That is correct, on
And you
Highway
left-
63.
All right. You left it on the side of the road, correct?
I did.
Okay.
Thank you,
And,
Kimberly.
Did you call
I missed
Chief
the
Alexander
opportunity.
at that point, or?
Well, we were riding, we were driving separate cars, but together. And so at that point, he had gotten in front of me, and I had to call him to tell him to turn around.
Okay, and he came back and picked you up?
Came back, and I jumped in his car.
Chief Alexander was on his way to a murder scene and turned around to pick you up to give you a drive to the murder scene. That's just that it hit me weird the first time. It hits me weird the second time. I get it. It is a small area. They all know each other, but that is what happened.
You
Or
left the
truck,
truck
or
there.
whatever, it's Suburban.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm trying not to talk over you, my apologies. And you left the F-250 there on the side of the road?
I did,
All right, and rode with Chief Alexander to the property?
that's correct.
And were you aware that your brother Alex had loaned Chief Alexander money at several points over the past couple of years?
I was not.
All right. And
Law enforcement is.
you testified that you learned of your brother's opioid addiction the weekend of Labor Day of 2021. Is that correct?
Remember, he doesn't like
That's when it started
Sled
coming
because
out, yes.
Sled came after Alexander.
So did you have any idea that he had a opioid or drug problem prior to that?
Prior to that, I did not.
Okay. So from your observations of him on a daily basis, he seemed to be sober at most times or not under the influence of any? Did you ever observe him under the?
Well, keep in mind now, so again, I'm not a lawyer in the firm, I live in Beaufort, so I don't see him daily.
Okay.
But our encounters usually would be during non-working hours. But even then, yes, I had no reason to think he was on pills.
Okay. All right. He's able to function pretty normally on a daily basis to your observations?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if him being able to function
Okay.
as an addict is really the flex that the
So-
state thinks it is.
Let's talk about the morning of June 8th.
Because
You said that you were the first person
I
over
just-
to the house at Moselle that morning, did I understand that
That's
correctly?
correct.
And you're the first person inside the house at that point?
That's correct.
And so, do you recall when Blanca Simpson got there?
I don't. What I can tell you is I was the last to leave the house and the first to come back in.
Okay. So she would have gotten there some point after you?
Yes, sir.
That
And
morning,
and I've heard in testimony that instead of going to Moselle, she went to Alameda.
But when she came to Moselle, it would have been after you, correct?
I think the other folks were there as well. Yeah, but well after me.
Is that a yes or a no, though?
And you testified about being in that.
They're
I
gonna
guess
they're
some
gonna get
folks call it the
snappy
gun
with each
room,
other.
When Sled came in and started looking at some of those guns in the gun room, correct?
And I think
Correct.
the
Well, I
prosecutor's
wasn't
not
in the
trying to
gun
get
room. I was in
snappy.
the main part of the house.
Okay. Did you ever go into the gun room while Sled was in
I
there?
did.
Okay. Because I think there's a video and evidence, and we're not going to go dig it up, but of Sled with body camera footage, and I think you do appear a bit.
I think so. I think probably what, best recollection I have
That's
is
the
I was
Captain
in the
America
main
video.
part of the house with Alec and family, and someone came and told me they were there and that they wanted to look around.
Okay.
And of course, I went to make sure that they had full access.
When you were in there, do you recall who was in there with you, other than the Sled agents? Because there were several other people, correct?
Well, I don't recall, without seeing the video, I saw the video, I saw Mark Ball, I saw Lee Cope, I saw the Agent McAllister, but.
The entire law
But I
firm.
don't think I would have remembered that.
Okay, but there are several attorneys in there, though, at a minimum, correct?
Friends and attorneys, friends, yeah, that's right.
Okay. Was Chris Wilson in there at that time?
You know, I don't remember. I don't have any recollection of him being there.
Okay. All right, and then let's go to June 10th, when Slade came over to, I believe it was Greenfield where they came?
That's correct.
To interview. It was you, Buster, Randy, Alex, I guess that's 4, right? Is that all who were interviewed that day, to your recollection?
Randy, me, Alec, and Buster, that's correct.
Okay. I think you
'Cause he
testified
was
that
there.
they didn't want to come inside. Is that what you testified to?
Well, I don't think they didn't not want to come inside because of any particular reason. I just think they wanted to get about their business.
So you don't recall,
I offered for them, I offered to come in, use the restroom, anything of that nature, drink water, anything like that.
This is
but they-
June 10th for the
They
interview.
did not.
you don't recall Lieutenant Gint coming in and introduce himself?
Inside the lodge? I do not.
Okay. All right.
This is regarding the June 10th interviews. I'm not surprised law enforcement just wanted to get about their business. I don't think it matters if they came in and got water.
Several interviews by Sled over the last few years, correct?
I've been in a few, yes, sir.
And I'm going to direct your attention to October 12th of 2010. Let me make sure I have that date correct. Or excuse me, not 2010. That would have been 2021. And I believe Sled came to your house that
Interested
day. Do you recall
to
that?
see if there's a difference in
I do
statements.
recall Sled coming to my house.
Okay.
Now, I can't tell you that's the date, but they certainly came.
This would have been the day that they interviewed both Buster and your wife that day. Does that help you out?
It does. I remember them coming. It
Okay.
was Agent Croft and I believe Agent Ryan Kelly.
Okay. And you sat into both those interviews, correct? With both Buster and your wife?
Well, I think the interview with one was an interview for Buster,
Okay.
and one was an interview with me and my wife.
Okay. All right. So you
That's the way I thought it was.
Okay.
I didn't think it was 3 interviews.
all right. And do you recall during that October 12th interview, the subject of this blue jacket coming up with Buster? Specifically, I'm talking about the one with Buster.
The conversation at my house,
Yes.
I do not recall it coming up.
Why didn't you
So
just
you don't
ask Buster about it?
recall,
He
Sled
testified.
bringing up, asking Buster about a blue jacket on October 12th of 2020.
I do not recall that.
So you don't recall his response?
I don't recall him bringing up a jacket.
Okay. Do you recall Buster responding?
Should have asked
that
Buster.
He did not recognize
Objection.
the blue jacket that was presented to him.
I don't recall a blue jacket being discussed.
Okay. And I think you also looked at it, and you don't recall.
They did not show me a blue jacket.
Anyone gonna
There was
object?
no blue jacket discussion in that
No?
interview, to my knowledge.
Okay.
Okay.
They should have asked Buster.
Beg court's indulgence.
Beg the chat's indulgent. The chat wants to know what you're asking about. Look, you can ask John Marvin if he knew his brother was capable of lying to his clients. If you knew his brother was on narcotics, how much did your brother really hide from
Do
you?
you recall
Fine.
Buster's response in that interview to being asked if
Why
that
aren't
could be
we
Randolph's
objecting?
jacket, to him saying if it's over $15, no, it wasn't?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay, what Buster,
Yep. Ask Buster.
he's asking to recall what Buster said.
Yep.
I sustain the objection.
And then you agreed with what Buster said right afterwards. You don't recall that?
No, Mr. Connor, what I'm telling you is I don't recall any discussions of a blue jacket in that interview.
Just move on.
I just don't recall that. I don't.
He doesn't recall it.
So you asking me that, I'm just telling you, I don't know of any discussions about a jacket in that interview.
Okay. All right. You testified about driving up to rehab, I think that Monday after Labor
Please don't
Day.
make it be more
Excuse me,
graphic.
Detox, correct? With
It
your
was
brother.
detox, that's correct.
And you said your brother kind of woke up startling as if from a dream. Is that what you testified to?
No, sir.
Okay.
I said that when
That
I was
was on the-
driving, well, Randy and I were driving him from detox
To rehab.
to the rehab facility down, and that was down in Orlando, Florida,
Okay.
is when that happened.
Yep.
All right. And you said, and again, I want to make this as clear as we can. You said you thought that he was waking up in response to a dream about the night of June 7th. Is that, did I understand that correctly?
That is the way that's what it appeared to be to me. And
Why?
Of course, I can't tell you what he was dreaming, but that's certainly what it appeared to me.
So you're not saying that because he said that, right?
That's right. He didn't wake up and say that. It's just, it was just such a startling, just the way he woke up out of his sleep. It was just so startling. It was fear. And it took him several seconds to realize that whatever he just saw
That
was
can be
not real.
interpreted multiple ways.
Or he was not living it.
I didn't have dream interpretation as part of this
Testified about
examination today
the day of June 7th
at all.
and the taking your dad to the hospital, him getting admitted, correct?
I did.
And that you and your brother Randy were
Thank you, the
sending out
Hollywood attorney.
multiple group texts
Yay.
about your dad's status. Is that correct?
Well, I sent a text,
Congratulations.
and I believe Randy sent one as well,
Okay. And
along with phone calls. I know Randy and I discussed it on the phone as well.
if I understood your testimony correctly, and you said that June 7th was actually kind of a hopeful day. Is
Glam
that,
and cozy is what I'm
based
going
off of
for.
what the doctors were saying?
Well, yes,
Cozy-
based on all
cozy
the bad
first.
news that he's been receiving, it was one little piece of
I'll also
hope
accept
that,
Jedi as a synonym
you
for
know,
cozy.
certainly if the doctor would have said at that point, you know, you're going home on hospice tomorrow, it would have been, that would be the worst case. But him saying that there was hope, that it was pneumonia and not the cancer, that there was some breathing treatments that may help, it gave us some hope.
And you sent out at least one group text with this information, correct, to your family members, right?
I know I sent one, I could have sent another, but I know there was one.
John Marvin already kind of answered that
You
on
recall if your
direct.
brother was included?
I don't
in
know if
that?
that's gonna get
Alex,
better.
specifically was included?
You
in
know,
that?
I saw the record showing it, and so yes, I believe it was my family, and I think it was just our family, actually.
And so there was hope, at least on the afternoon, June 7th, that your dad had pneumonia, which could potentially be treated. And,
Or fatal.
There was a little bit of hope
Could
about
be
that,
could be
correct?
both.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if your brother had told Janine Seckinger during that day that your dad was taking a major turn to the worse, that would not be truthful, correct?
That would be correct, and the testimony I heard is he didn't say that.
He didn't say what?
He didn't say it was terminal, or dire, or whatever,
What?
whatever you're
Are you
saying.
based off of Alex's testimony?
Or Jeannie
yes, sir.
Seckinger's.
Okay.
He's like, meh.
So if Janine
So, well,
Seckinger,
I can tell you this, if somebody said that day that it was terminal, one of two people was wrong, or both.
okay.
Fair.
All right. So if Janine Seckinger was told that,
If Jeannie Second said that, she was wrong.
And if she
were
was
you
told
present
that,
for any conversations between your brother and Janine Seckinger on June 7th?
I wasn't.
and if she was told that, whoever told her was wrong. I mean, I think that goes both ways. Law and Lumber said, answering because I'm seeing questions in the chat. 401k is exempt from clawback collections, etc. by federal law. Using those funds would be entirely appropriate because they're statutorily protected. Going to how Alec Murdaugh might be paying for his defense. Atomic Blonde, thank you. They can't be that
I'm gonna
close if he
say,
doesn't notice
Mr.
his brother has a
Murdaugh,
$50,000 a week habit,
Would you
right?
say that the Murdaugh name and legacy is something that's important to you and your brothers?
I'm glad they're asking about this. He might say no.
Yes, I think any family's name and legacy is important to them. Do I think my family's name is more important than yours or any of y'all's? No, I don't.
It's just important to us.
But it's important to your brother as well, correct?
I think he would feel the exact same way as what I just said, that all families are important.
Okay. No problem. Yeah.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Really?
Thank you, you may step down.
That's the it for cross-examination?
Defense rests, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the defense's case. And we will excuse
adjourn.
you for this day and have you come back at 9:30
When are they going to do the jury review?
tomorrow morning. Have a good evening.
Interesting he didn't say defense rests subject to the jury view, but the defense rests. Y'all. We made it. We're at the end of the defense case. End of the defense case. The defense has rested. The court's going to want to talk to them about scheduling with regard to the jury view. And we'll get there. But for now, the defense has rested. The prosecution has rebuttal witnesses tomorrow. That was not a very helpful cross for the state at all. I think it's interesting they didn't ask, do you know your brother was like lying and stealing from clients? But
If everyone will be
All right.
seated.
let's talk scheduling.
The defense has rested any matters of law at this time.
Your Honor, we would, defense would just renew our motion for directed verdict on the grounds previously argued at the close of the state's case. That's all.
Mr. Waters.
Your Honor, again, we would rely on our arguments previously made that the motion should be denied. Be happy to answer any specific issues Your Honor may have, but I would rely on our previous arguments.
The motion is denied based on all the reasons stated at the close of the state's
They renewed their
case.
motion denied. Not a surprise.
Now, with regard to
Jury view.
reply, what do you have, Mr. Waters?
Ah, rebuttal.
Yes, sir. We have maybe 4 witnesses, maybe 5 at this point in time. I'm hopeful that we could accomplish that in a day. Obviously, as is the nature of reply, we will, assess that tonight. But right now, I have 4 definite witnesses and perhaps a 5th that, as it stands right now, that we would have. I don't think many of them, except for one, would be very lengthy.
I don't think any of them, well, except for one would be that lengthy. One
By
being lengthy?
I don't mean exceptionally so.
4 to 5 rebuttal witnesses.
Any comment, Mr. Harpootlian or Mr.?
Your Honor, I
long
no
as
way
they're not-
critical of Mr. Waters, but his estimate of time, a little
His estimate of time sucks.
mushy, I think is a good way to put it. I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying
What?
this was going to be a 3-week trial, and now it's a 6-week trial.
Yeah,
I'm just,
it is mushy.
a little skeptical that we'll get it all done tomorrow. I'm just saying, I'll be happy, I'll be ecstatic if it happens, but for planning purposes,
He's not wrong.
perhaps maybe midday Wednesday would be a better.
Well, what about the jury view? Exactly,
and somewhere
Jim.
in this process, Your Honor's indicated you'd allow the jury to visit the site.
At
So,
the close of the reply.
Oh,
so we're at, I guess, Mr. Waters' mercy.
With everything.
These witnesses who you anticipate will contradict issues presented by the defense?
Yes,
or
Your Honor.
address the credibility of matters raised?
the judge is, and I think Poot was fair to criticize that Waters' estimate of time has not been great and they're trying to plan when closings are going to be. But the court is getting into the fact that the rebuttal witnesses can't be cumulative. They need to directly address the defense witnesses And I think the judge is going to make the prosecution explain who their witnesses are to make sure that they are not just rehashing the same shit a million times. But the defense is looking at the court going, you allowed all this other stuff in. So, you know, the prosecution has dragged this well beyond a 3-week case. The defense's case in chief was very quick. All things considered, the prosecution dragged out their case much beyond the defense. The defense estimated a week. They got it done in a week. So I think the judge is going to be asking, who are your witnesses? What are they testifying to make sure that these witnesses are not just cumulative witnesses on extraneous issues that have already been proven. It has to hit what was said in the defense case. And I very much want to know, but I didn't want to talk over it because it's going to be quick.
By the defense.
It will be focused on issues that were raised during the defense case.
So you say.
All right. Okay. Well, 9:30.
No!
Tomorrow morning.
Ask
Good
him
evening.
more questions. I don't trust that it won't be cumulative as fuck. Damn it. Your Honor, you had such an opportunity. Make him promise. Make him promise. Ah. All right. The prosecution rebuttal case starts tomorrow. They say it'll last a day. I think it looks like we're going to get to closing on Thursday. We see Chanley Painter in court right behind where John Marvin is leaving. We see all the family in court. The side behind where the family is has gotten very full today. That side is not always this full, but very, very full on that side today. So I don't know why they're having like a family reunion up in court, but they certainly are. Interesting. So with that, I'm going to summarize in a minute and answer questions, but the jury is still visiting the scene. I think the prosecution is going to take, what's today, Monday? The prosecution's going to go Tuesday and then maybe part of the day Wednesday, and then you've got a half day for a jury view. So I think closing Thursday, give court a half day Wednesday, give the jury view Wednesday afternoon, let the attorneys prep their closing. And I think that makes the most sense. So the jury's going to do a jury view after the state's rebuttal case. So yeah, I think you'll probably get that jury view Wednesday afternoon. And yeah, Wednesday afternoon and then closing on Thursday. That's where I think we're at. So closing and charge the jury Thursday. And that's where we're at. I don't think the jury's going to come back with a verdict on Friday. I think we'll get into the following week. I know it looks like John Grisham. Everybody has said that. I agree with you. It does look like John Grisham. Apparently, it's the mayor of Walterboro. Or maybe John Grisham is the mayor of Walterboro, and they're in fact the same person. Has anyone seen them both in the same room at the same time? I don't think so. Maybe they're the same person. That's just me being facetious. Emily, have you watched the Netflix documentary? No. Makes me look at this family different, including Paul and Maggie. And that's why I haven't watched it. I already knew too much. I already knew more about this case than I wanted to know going into the murder trial, because I started covering it when it was just an attorney getting up to nonsense with a bunch of other suspicious stuff going on with the family. So by the time I had covered all of that, and I covered all of, and you can go back to the Emily Show podcast, I'd covered from the roadside incident forward. Because once we got to the roadside incident, I was like, oh, stealing from clients, law firm comes crashing down, roadside incident, murder for hire. Like, I covered all of that. Once he got charged with murder, I'm like, well, we're already in it now. We're in it now. And so we're in it now. But no, I will watch some of those after this. Yes, it can change your perception. My perception of Alec Murdaugh is already deeply tainted by what I know about the cases that I've covered. It doesn't mean that he did this. And so making sure to be clear in the behavior with the clients already put me over the edge, is quite a lot. And I do listen to the Murdaugh Murders podcast, and did before he was charged with this murder. So with that, it's quite a lot. So with all of that, no, I have not watched it. I have not watched the Netflix one at all. I know it can change people's perceptions. That's why the jury is told to stay away from all of the media with regard to this case. It's why they're questioned with regard to all of it. So it's a lot. Just the lawyer bit of this outrages me. Like, it just outrages me. The boat wreck part of this case outrages me. A little bit of that came up, but the boat wreck stuff is wild stuff. And yeah. So I tried to stay away from the rest of it because I don't need I don't need multiple perceptions with my perception. I've got my own perceptions. I don't need external perceptions. So I'll wait until this is all done and the jury's deliberating, and then I will take a look and see what I think. But the jury's not supposed to watch it. It doesn't mean you all can't, but it shouldn't change how you feel about this case. And that's the problem, because it shouldn't overweigh the questions with the evidence. And there are still questions with this evidence both ways. So let's talk about the end of the day. The defense ended their case today with Alec Murdaugh's brother, John Marvin Murdaugh. And at the very end of the day, the defense rested. The prosecution says they have 4 to 5 rebuttal witnesses and that it should take them a day. Harpootlian said, I'm not attacking Creighton Waters, but his time estimate's a little mushy, which I think is a very fair criticism. He didn't say attacking, he said criticizing. I think is actually A, criticism, and B, a fair criticism, because Creighton Waters started out in a 3-week case, and then the judge let in all of the 404 evidence, and then it became a 3-week plus 3-week case, because we ended up with like 4 trials inside of one, and that's why this case dragged on so much. So we are now in week 6 of the 3-week trial that is the Murdaugh trial. John Marvin, I think, brought a lot of humanity to this case. You could tell how painful this was for him and his family, explained things that happened, explained that he had never seen the blue raincoat before, explained that his dad's gun was named Bo Whoop, explained how Paul was driving his truck and how the cars all got switched up right before these murders happened, which is confusing at best. When we heard about it in previous testimony, it was really confusing. So really went through all of that quite well. And I thought was very, very emotional testimony. And then not much of a cross-examination. Truly, the cross-examination was very quick. And the cross-examination just got into, yeah, you ended up riding to the crime scene with Chief Alexander. Did you know your brother had been loaning money to Chief Alexander? We learned a little bit more about Chief Alexander because we heard how Alec was so frustrated that SLED was investigating their friend, Chief Alexander, and they went to that trial. So here we are with all of that. I don't know if that helps the jury at all or if they're just done at this point. So what do we have from here? We have a jury view that's going to happen after the state's rebuttal case. We probably have a day and a half of the state's rebuttals case. So day and a half of rebuttal and a jury view. I think the jury view will be Wednesday afternoon, and then closing and jury instructions will be on Thursday. That's where I think we are in this case. So Thursday, do I think we'll get a verdict on Friday? No. Do I think we'll get a verdict on Monday? No. I think it will take some time. So for those of you asking, what is a jury view? The jury gets to go out to Moselle and look around. They get to see how small the feed room is. They get to see how close the feed room is to where Maggie's body was. So they get to go look at the crime scene, even though now it's 2 years later. They get to go see the structures that are still there. They don't get to do their own investigation. They don't get to step up their step counter and walk around. They get to see, so they get a sense for sizing. But things have changed, and they will get a jury charge with regard to things changing, that the property is dynamic. It has grown. Chips. I see the chat talking about all dressed chips. Trees have grown. Things are different. So we'll see that being charged to them, maybe in the presence. Will the defendant go out to the jury view? Unknown at this point. How many lawyers will go out? Unknown at this point. Law enforcement will block off Moselle to make sure there are no randos taking Snapchat videos or Instagram stories or TikToks out at the crime scene, because apparently the crime scene had to be cleared this weekend. The Moselle property had to be cleared this weekend because people were taking selfies and what have you up by the kennels on that property. So with that, I'm going to answer some questions and then we are going to wrap for the day. And I'm going to, get to work on other stuff that I got to work on. So let's answer questions. Blues, thank you for your super chat. I'm the youngest of 6 very close siblings. However, the timeline would never pass the most devoted of us. I could never defend a homicide. I don't know if that's what John Marvin sees, but the timeline is difficult, and I don't know what John Marvin sees. Best source for a concise timeline breakdown. Have they put the concise timeline up online? It should be up online. And if not, it will be up online. And then I will be breaking it down in quick bits. When we get to that, I'm a few weeks behind. But I don't know. I have not seen anyone break down the concise timeline. There is a concise timeline in evidence. I just don't know if it's on the interwebs yet. Quesadilla Pickles. I couldn't help it. I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it at all. I just listened to the Netflix miniseries about the Murdaugh murders, and I'm now legitimately depressed in general now that I know so much about the case, right? Because it changes the way you look at the case. And I totally get that. So I totally get that. Let's see. Can the jury, when deciding, use life experiences to make their decisions being a hunter, or does it have to be based entirely on what is presented? The jury will use their common sense and their life experiences. They get to determine what the facts are. They get to determine who to believe and who not to believe. They bring in experts and they hope the jury relies on the experts. But at the end of the day, the jury can say, I don't believe that at all. It's up to them. A family reunion in court makes me laugh more than it should. Look, we're all Nefertiti, we're all looking for a little bit of a giggle. It's totally fair. It felt like it in this court. It felt like everybody was just, John Marvin gets off the stand and he's like, come give me a hug. Good to see you. It was like, oh, okay. Hain said, does a guilty verdict require a unanimous jury? Yes. Well, so does a not guilty. Guilty and not guilty require unanimous. Anything else is a hung jury. So for those of you that are saying you've sent me stuff, I will go back through the email and take a look. I did not do a ton of that over the weekend. The best way to send me stuff is to my publicly available email. That's where I look at it the most, because that's where I see it the most readily. Things do get buried in my DMs. This is as bad as a Casey Anthony trial. Keep talking about everything that ever happened. Jury doesn't know what to keep or disregard. Feel for the jury. It's a lot of information for the jury. Motion to get Cozy Law Nerd merch. I don't know what that means, but we'll look for some Cozy Law Nerd merch. Jay Scott said, what does motive means and opportunity mean in this case to you? That's the biggest key points for me. I think when we're looking at, that comes from, of course, the rules of evidence for why some of this was allowed. But opportunity, I think, is what they need to argue. One of the big things they need to argue. I also think opportunity in this case almost outweighs motive for me. Who else could have? Who else would have? And why? And so I think it's a big factor in this case. And the motive, I don't know if the motive will fall flat with the walls were closing in. Well, the walls financially were closing in, but he'd always gotten away from it before. Truly. So even though they're saying, oh, Jeannie confronted him at work, yeah, but he'd always paid before and gotten out of trouble. When he double dipped on his brother's checks, they were all like, it's fine. So I don't know if he would have actually felt it the same way. I just don't know if he actually felt it the same way. I don't. So with that, I think opportunity is a really big one. But if there's a keypad on the door to the gun room, who else could have had access to these guns? Because one of the big opportunities is who had access to these guns. Well, maybe more people than we think. But also when you look at the kennel video, why lie about the kennel video? He's like, I don't trust SLED. Well, okay, I get that you don't trust SLED. But if you didn't know when they were killed, why lie about that particular frame of time? Why try to distance yourself in that time frame? It's a valid question. And, you know, when you look at that plus opportunity, plus the tool marking expert, we never saw a tool marking expert from the defense. We saw the defense vigorously cross-examine the tool mark expert for the state, but we didn't see a rebuttal witness saying you can't determine that these were family guns. So, you know, we will see. Janice said, I'm believing John Marvin's testimony more than Alex. His emotional reactions are more believable than his brother's. John Marvin is genuine. He came across as completely genuine to me as well. Have any of the SLED agents been fired due to the errors committed in this investigation? Not to my knowledge. Emily, when are the purple hoodies available? Soon, and I will keep you posted. I will keep you posted on Law Nerd Alert. And if you are signed up to Law Nerd Alert, and I will keep you posted on, you know, the text crew and the member spaces as well. Don't you worry. But if you sign up on Law Nerd Alert, there is a code on Law Nerd Alert for the Law Nerd Shop. You can use it on more than one order. And so I promise you, we will drop them before the code expires. I will make sure that we drop them when you can still get them. I will chat with my team. I wanted to make sure that the samples held up to washing before I launched them, but I was so excited about them that I went, squee! And then I let everybody see them in the member spaces. You guys got a sneak peek. Not everybody got a sneak peek of the purple sweaters. Emily, can SLED be held accountable? How did Buster get there so fast? Why is he allowed in court before being on the stand? Sloppy investigation, purple power. So, Emily, can SLED be held accountable? I don't think there's an investigation into SLED's investigation. If there is, then we'll see. How did Buster get there so fast? I don't know. He was like 2 hours away. So if he got called, I don't know what time that interview is. That interview is like 1 a.m. with law enforcement. He would have called Buster around 10 p.m. So it seemed like Buster didn't get there till after 1 a.m. So I don't know if that's that fast. Why is he allowed in court before he's on the stand? Because there was no exclusionary order. All the witnesses could watch the testimony. It's super weird. Carol said, watch the Netflix special. It shows how Buster was the favorite and Paul not. I am not going to watch it until this trial's done. But also, I think it can lead to theories that aren't presented in this case. And I am trying to not lean into theories that aren't presented in this case. There are a lot of theories I have in my brain, but I want to hear the state articulate their theories, and I need to have the prosecution articulate their theories, because that is what the jury's going to do. Lisa Frampton said, Emily, Buster was on scene before his interview. When he took the phone call, he said, I need them to go meet Buster. So when he's that first night in the interview, he's saying, I need them to go meet Buster. So that's during that interview, is my recollection. Marlena said, was there ever a chance of an unbiased trial? I think you did the best, or I think they did the best they could to find a jury that was not aware of this case beforehand. But all the witnesses are going to be on a particular side of a trial. It's an adversarial process. So I don't think there's any evidence that this jury was biased in any way about media or by the media before this trial started. Though clearly we see that the Murdaugh family believes that the media was biased against Paul, particularly in the boat case. It seems that they don't really like the way the media has presented things, but they shouldn't have seen the Netflix story. I don't like that it came out during this case. The HBO one came out quite a while ago, but having something come out where a juror might go home and sit down and turn on Netflix to watch something else and it gets served to them if it's trending on Netflix causes me a lot of dismay. I realized that they were arguing they wanted to release it around the anniversary of Mallory Beach's death, but I think it should have been released after this concluded, seeing that it was so close in time. Don't release it in the middle of the trial, but the attorneys didn't fight with it. They didn't try to stall it. So I don't really know what they could have done. But the court did go over, by 3 weeks. So if the court had stayed on trial, if the trial had stayed on time, would this have come out after? Yeah, it was supposed to be a 3-week trial. So is that on Netflix? I don't know. But it's going to be on trending on Netflix, and that's hard. But then again, can they really push it back? I don't know. I don't work in the media. But this week's podcast episode, I talk a lot about streaming rights and how valuable they are because South Park is being sued. So this week I talk about streaming, and it's something to consider about how much money there is in streaming rights, exclusivity, how much the timing of something matters, how much you can draw it out. And that's coming out on Wednesday. Question, did they test for fingerprints on her phone? Robin, the fingerprint testimony was so long ago, but the fingerprint testimony went like this.
Oh my God. So I have so much experience. There's so many ways to get fingerprints. And we lifted fingerprints everywhere we could, and there's no fingerprints.
So that. Attic Hatch Sound said South Park not getting sued. South Park is getting sued. We're going to talk about it on the podcast on Wednesday. South Park is most definitely getting sued. And we go over that complaint on Wednesday. Question, wasn't John Marvin the one that towed the boat away after the boat wreck? Yes, it did. Rebecca over in the chat said, had to look it up on Netflix. It didn't come up. Well, that's good. I wonder, where are you located? I wonder if they're serving it to people in South Carolina more heavily. Kyle said they may be getting sued, but they won't lose. I don't know on this one. I'm going to wait. I'm going to reserve my thoughts. It's a very interesting lawsuit with South Park. Question, I mean, I am leaning acquittal. This is from Tapestry Man, but all of JMM's testimony seems so irrelevant. How or why is prosecution not objecting more? Am I stupid? You're not stupid. And I don't know why prosecution didn't object more. They probably don't want to seem like they're overstepping. And that will be an interesting.
Here's what I found.
They probably don't want to seem like they're overstepping. They haven't objected a lot, though. It's not like a change in patterning. And I think John Marvin's testimony was humanizing, really. I thought it was good testimony for the defense. It leaves on a more emotional note. And I think that's an interesting thing. So with that, Can-See AM is wearing a freshly washed and ironed t-shirt and body cam footage, still has shape without any wrinkles until he uses it to wipe his face. Yes, it is clearly a freshly laundered shirt. It still smells laundered when they take it out to test it. Since AM testified, can he be called on rebuttal? No. Digital Forensic Examiner here. Thank you, Cynthia. If you put your phone in airplane mode, but you leave Bluetooth on, it will still overwrite data. And it seems like that's what happened in this case. Let's see. Who is the lady with the lovely scarf behind Alec? One of the defense team, but I'm not sure exactly her role on the defense team. Jillian said, that is not party opponent. What on earth? It was interesting. Jillian, I've never seen it used that way, but I don't think they're wrong on this one. Once we went back and looked through it, I'm like, they could argue that's an agent. I thought it was very interesting. Can we discuss the HBO Netflix story after the verdict? Sure. We'll see where it fits. Greta Grace said, narrow it down. Common denominator between AM, Maggie, and Paul. AM's pills and them confiscating the pills. Prosecution chose wrong motive to go forward with this. Maybe, but they sure wanted that financial information in, didn't they? The prosecution very much wanted that financial information. And if they're that confident in their case, why do they need the financial information in so badly? Why not just keep the case clean? Has defense submitted a timeline to combat sleds? No, they just did the cross-examination and they had somebody go over the digital a bit more, but they did not present an alternative timeline. If he is found not guilty, will he still have to stay in jail for the financial crimes? Yes, unless he can make bail. And that had been set over $7 million. I don't think he can make a bond on that. Lauren R. said Eric Bland tweeted regarding Bubba running around with a chicken and he listened only to Alec, then was put in the correct kennel. Timeline and logic equals Alec. I think there's an argument for that. Alec never said he put the dogs up, ever. AM's testimony felt like AH's, but JM made me cry. JM definitely rang more true to me as well. Pellets left at Moselle. How do I send you chips? I've asked 1,000 times. Bruce, I'm sorry if you've asked 1,000 times. My P.O. box is in the description of all of the stuff, and I know that the mods share that as well, that you can send things to that address. It's there. So let's see. I've been on 6 juries in South Carolina and only 2 objections total. It's a South Carolina thing. Karen W., thank you so much for your perspective on this. It's a South Carolina thing. There we go. Thank you. No, we'll talk about the South Park. I promise we'll talk about it more on Wednesday. Does a hung jury mean automatic retrial or no? It means they have the right to retry, but it does not equal an automatic retrial. That's a prosecutorial decision that depends on a lot of factors. I talked about it. What was the last hung jury that we talked about? Who was the last hung jury that we talked about? Masterson? I think it was Masterson. It might have been some of the hung counts on Weinstein. It was in one of those two that I talked about hung juries. There's a lot of decisions that go into how to decide to retry. And if this jury hangs, then we will come talk about it for sure. Heather said, Nightbot, thank you for the laughs. We keep Nightbot around. Kimberly Noel said, with the amount of sloppy investigation and corruption in this case, Alec should be acquitted on that alone, or our democracy and the burden of truth is more important than anything. I think the burden on the state is the most important part. But even if there are things SLED could have done better, I don't think anyone's proven that there's corruption in this case. I think there's a lot of questions. But I think that there's also enough that the jury could find it. And I think that's why the judge said and denied the motions. I think it's a tough case. I think if he's convicted, it's rife with appellate issues that we've talked about, the things that appeals court really look at, not the discretionary stuff, but the 404 stuff is something that appellate courts look at and will overturn cases on. But yes, the investigation is absolutely not ideal. The burden should not be shifted lower at all. And I wonder if the jury will think that the state's overreaching in this. They might very well. There are parts of this case that feel like an overreach. But does that mean there's not enough for the jury to find him guilty as a matter of law? I don't think we're there. So that's why the motion for directed verdicts were denied. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But as always, I appreciate perspectives. It's a hard case. Colin said, I can't quit thinking about the fact that they ask him if he ever used the water hose. When you watch the extended clip of Cash in the kennel, someone is spraying the hose. Who? Yeah, somebody's clearly spraying the hose during that time. Clearly spraying the hose. And Alex says it's not him. So who is it? Maggie? But there's no, Maggie was in flip-flops at the time. They didn't talk about any mud other than maybe on the back of her leg where it looked like there was a tire mark from possibly like bumping up against the UTV. So no, they didn't talk about it. There's a lot of water at the kennels and they didn't talk about it much. Elf, question, did you discuss the previous question about the Allen rule in regards to what? No, I didn't, because I didn't know in regards to what. I would need a more specific question and not just a general overall, because otherwise my brain is not in regards to. CB said there's a still shot of JMM wearing a t-shirt with a pocket with the same logo as the one AM had on that night in the Netflix doc. I mean, it might be a fishing company that they both like. So there's that. Witness watching in court is like watching online. Yes. Though I think watching online is better because you can see people's faces and not see the back of their heads. I don't think these witnesses were forestalled from watching online either, which is wild to me. JMM taking Paul's boat makes me believe his testimony with a grain of salt, and the jury does not know that. Fair, but the jury does not know that. Coffee Addict, hello, you're amongst friends. If he said they did him so bad, how would Alec know that there was more than one shooter at the time because it wasn't disclosed to him yet? Well, you could argue that he saw the shot shells and he saw the 300 casings and assumed because there were two different weapons. But when the police ask him, did you see anything? He never says, I saw shot shells or I saw casings. Was it Mark Ball? One of the lawyers that showed up, I don't remember exactly which lawyer because there have been so many. One of the lawyers that showed up said, I immediately saw casings. But nobody said that they saw that, or Alec never said that he saw that, even though other lawyers did. So it might just be his vernacular though. They did him so bad might just be, I don't know who, as opposed to a actual plural. But also he could have assumed, but he never said he saw the shot shells. So I don't know. I don't know. And I think there's still question about whether he said they did him or I did him. Because in court, he spoke similarly. Like he definitely has mannerisms in the way that he speaks. Lucia Jones said this guy is in all the videos, Netflix too, talking to law enforcement, removing guns, etc. always first on scene. I don't know. But yes, but so is Jim Griffin. Erica M. said, question, why is the prosecution not leaning into the confrontation about the bag of pills as the inciting incident? I don't know. As a family dispute gone left as AM avoids withdrawals on the day he found out at work is much cleaner than what they're arguing. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why at all. The drone footage was in September. Thank you, Jennifer Johnson. I saw drone footage. I just wasn't sure when it was. Because I don't remember when they cleaned out the house. I don't know when Blanca stopped living at Moselle. So again, there's a lot of information from the Netflix documentary. I haven't watched it. I'm not going to until after the case wraps. It's a lot. I mean, there are things to be argued both ways in this case, and we're going to continue to be able to argue things both ways in this case. How a jury's going to come to a verdict in this is still not clear to me. I'm hoping that closing arguments are clear, and then we'll take a vote. Did closing arguments help, or did closing arguments not help? Because it is not super clear. But who else had the opportunity? Who else was there during that window, that very small window that Alec wasn't there? How? How did they know he wouldn't be there? Why did they not come looking for him? If somebody was there to take out this family, why didn't they just wait for him to return and take him out too? There's a lot of questions there. A lot of questions there. And the state has to make it clear, because the state being like, it could be this, it could be that, it could be this, is not going to work. If it could be one of 4 reasonable things, that is doubt. So the state needs to have a very clear theory of this case when they close. And if they don't, I don't see how they win this case. Unless the jury is basing it off of the fact that they hate Alec Murdaugh, which is not the thing they should be basing it off of at all. And that's a hard thing. So there's a lot of circumstances here that you can go, okay, these are the things that lean towards guilt, but there's a lot of questions still. Maggie's phone being one of them. How does he clean all this up, get himself cleaned up, ditch Maggie's phone? I don't know. How are his phone and Maggie's phone not moving at the same time? There needs to be some clearer theories of this. I think there's still a lot of questions in this case, and we'll see the rebuttal witnesses from the state tomorrow. So with that, law nerds, thank you for being here. Thank you for being an amazing group. Thank you for being a great community to have conversation around the interwebs. Thanks for letting me do what I do and talk to y'all all day long. I don't think I could watch this trial without you. I really couldn't. In week 6, I'm exhausted of this trial. I want to move on to other things, including connect the dot puzzles. I want to do other stuff. One more week, y'all. One more week. I think on Thursday, we're going to get closing arguments. So hang in there. Let's get to a rebuttal case. We're going to have a half day off here somewhere when the jury goes and does a jury view. And I'm ready for it. I am ready for it. And with that, it's time to say goodbye. So thank you. Thank you to the moderators. And I hope you all had a good weekend. Thank you for gifting memberships. Peggy, I saw that right as we're hopping out here. And with that, law nerds, I'll see you tomorrow morning at 8:25-ish to see what the state's rebuttal case is. You can find all the Law Nerd goodies at lawnerdshop.com. Connect with me on social media at the Emily D. Baker. And don't forget to check out my podcasts, The Emily Show, and the new podcast, Quick Bits, summarizing everything I talk about on my Tuesday and Thursday live streams. You know, when you only have time for just the quick bits.